Carl or Kyle?
It's Carl, and we're live now. Hi, everyone.
Wait, hold on. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's
Was
right.
it Carl or Kyle?
It's Carl. Hi, everyone. I'm talking to Steve, who is also known as Destiny. He's a Twitch streamer, and he's here to talk to me about how he's a disgusting, wrong-thinking SJW.
Pretty much. And then I'm Destiny, aka Stephen Bonnell. Like, I don't know, whatever you know me as. I'm known in gaming communities as Destiny. I started in StarCraft and then League, and I kind of do variety gaming. I'm on Twitch. I don't consider myself an SJW, but compared to the gaming community, I guess I'm pretty left-leaning.
You're obviously not an SJW. The fact that you're willing to come and talk and you haven't just called me a racist for disagreeing with you means that you're not an SJW.
Well, I mean, you haven't started talking yet. You might be a racist. I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
That's true. I mean, you know, I guess I could be. So, okay, let's talk progressivism then, because I think you're in the camp of you're pro-diversity, pro-multiculturalism. Are you pro-political correctness or?
Man, I mean, it really. The problem with all of these terms is that they get. It's like so hard to understand what we're talking about, I guess. So like if we go through and deconstruct the terms one at a time, like
sure,
if you talk about like pro-diversity, like I am very much pro-diversity in that I would like to see like people from different backgrounds and whatnot achieve success. I'm only going to talk about the United States because I can't speak to your politics in particular, but like at least in the United States, like I'm pro-diversity and pro-multiculturalism in that I like the idea of a lot of people from different backgrounds who look different, come from different cultures, have different ideas, you know, achieving something in society in relatively equal terms. I don't know if I'm necessarily pro-diversity and that we need to exterminate every cisgendered white male and remove them from society and, you know, put them into the breeding factories and only bring them out, you know, when they need to reproduce. Same thing with the last thing. Oh, like political correctness. It's very strange to talk about political correctness because I don't always know what that means sometimes. For instance, if you're having a discussion with somebody, for instance, so like you could make a factual claim. Islamic people commit most of the acts of terror around the world. That's a factual claim. I'm pretty sure. That's like I'm 99% sure that's a factual claim, right?
You're
I don't think that it's I don't think that there's a problem with that statement. So if somebody's like, "Oh, what, dude? Like, you shouldn't say that about Islamic people." It's like, well, I mean, if you're talking about PC there, I think that's pretty stupid. But one of the things that I run into when I talk to a lot of people, I call them the Trumples, so the hardcore Trump supporters, is that a guy will get on to, am I allowed to use extreme language here? Or
of course you are.
Okay, so if I get on with a guy and he starts talking about how like we need to deal with all these niggers in the United States and these spics are destroying the United States, I'm like, dude, holy shit, like chill out. Like these are humans, these are people. Like there are other things going on here. They're not abhorrently horrible people. And they're like, oh, so you're just trying to PC me? You're just trying to PC limit what I'm trying to say? Right? It's like, well, hold on. So I always get really nervous when people throw around the term political correct. Like if you look at somebody like Trump, I don't consider Trump somebody that is a champion against political correctness. I just consider him to be almost blatantly like bigoted or racist. And like this is the kind of person that I don't know. I wouldn't mind seeing it toned down a little bit. With
now I'm gonna have to defend Trump, aren't I?
Be careful.
Okay. How is it that you think Trump's a racist? I'd like to hear your rationale for that, because I've watched a lot of Trump's speeches, a lot of his campaign. I was following it all, and he didn't seem to be an overt racist to me. So
sure, I guess so. The two big examples that I always go back to, I guess one might be debatable, but the other one looks pretty bad. The first one that I would say is, I think that this is going to sound cuckish, I guess, but the way that you phrase things, I think is really important. So a black guy comes into my house and I say like, hey, I don't want you in here because you might steal some shit because you're black. That's a pretty racist statement, right? Even if they had a history of thievery, that's pretty racist.
That's literally a technically racist statement.
Sure. So if he comes into my house and I go like, hey, dude, no offense, but like, I know you stole shit in the past. I'm either keeping my eye on you or I don't want you here. I don't think that's racist, right? So in looking at Trump, if Trump were to make statements like, illegal immigration is a serious problem with the United States. The border to the south is far too porous, and we have trouble with illegal immigrants coming to this country and ruining job markets or, you know, causing crime or whatever. Those are fine statements. When you make statements like Mexico is not sending its best, they're sending rapists, thieves, and murderers, and some of them are good people, I imagine. Like those kinds of statements like make me wonder like what kind of a person says something like that, you know? Like there are like I could think of like 20 different ways off the top of my head that you could phrase that in a way that doesn't offend the fuck out of so many people and gives kind of this hint that maybe there's something deeper going on.
See, my problem with that statement is the implication that Mexico is sending these people. That's actually my problem with the statement. I mean, yeah, there are people who are going to be offended by that, but I imagine if we were to dig up the statistics, then you'd probably find there is a propensity towards crime from illegal immigrants. I mean, that's probably the case with any illegal immigrant anywhere. So,
I mean, the numbers themselves are hard to find. There's already debates on how many illegal immigrants are actually in the United States. I think 13 million is the commonly accepted figure.
yeah, I heard 11 million, but yeah, it's going to be in double digits.
Yeah. It's pretty big. I guess it's just that I guess it's just the phrasing of that. Like the only thing you can go by with somebody, especially a politician, is what they say, right? Or rather, with somebody like Trump, because he doesn't have political actions, right? Is what they say.
Can you even go by what Trump says, though?
Yeah, sure. Well, there's that. So there's that, which I disagree with it, but I understand that you could try to defend those comments. So the thing that I think really hurt Trump the most, at least in my eyes and the eyes of a lot of other people, are the comments that he made about the judge. This was another scenario where Trump could have very easily said, and I even looked into the judge, and this is legitimate. The judge has ties to La Raza? I don't remember what it was called. Some organization that was very pro-Mexico, had a lot of Mexican heritage. These are ties that would make me question, like, could this judge deliver an impartial ruling? I'm not actually sure. And these are things that should be brought into question, the partiality of a judge or whatever. And that's totally legitimate, totally valid. But when he gets on, I think it was NBC, and starts talking about how, like, this guy's Mexican and I'm putting up a wall, I don't know if he can make a ruling. And then further goes on to say that probably no Mexican or Islamic person could give any ruling on any case ever. Well, damn, dude, like, this guy, like, that judge could have ran for president. Both of his parents were citizens. Like,
hang on. I'm not sure that's a fair characterization of what Trump was saying there, because he's not saying that the guy is incapable of being an impartial judge because he's Mexican. He's saying that he thinks he's incapable of being an impartial judge towards Trump because he's Mexican. Because the mainstream media narrative, whether it's true or not, let's just assume that Trump is a giant racist against Mexicans. Mm-hmm. You can't really expect someone who, like I said, has ties to things like La Raza, who is very prominent about their Mexican heritage, to then, or at least not necessarily you wouldn't expect, but there is a natural tendency to be at least vaguely suspicious of someone who might be inclined to show a bias based on what they're dealing with, not just because they're Mexican.
Yeah, I can kind of understand that, but like this, I feel like you have a legitimate slippery slope emerging here where you get a guy that goes to court, you get an unfavorable ruling, and then the guy's like, well, listen, like, I'm a very pro-Trump person. I had signs up in my yard. I post on social media about this. I don't know if this judge knows that I'm pro-Trump. And the fact that this guy has Mexican parents, maybe he gave me a bad ruling. Right? You see, so like we end up in this weird area where, like, is it really fair to call into question a person's loyalty to the United States when they're loyal enough that the drafters of the Constitution said he could run for president, right? This judge could run for president, right? Sure. So he's obviously, the founding fathers thought that he would have loyalty enough to his country.
I don't think he's questioning the loyalty to the United States, though. I think he's
kind of. He's a federal judge. Your loyalty to the process of due process, right? Of law and order is a pretty big part of the United States.
Yeah, but I don't think that a person exhibiting bias in their work is necessarily disloyalty. I think it's more about human failing, isn't it?
Well, kind of, but imagine this guy would be president of the United States and had to make questionable calls about our relationship to Mexico, right? Would you call into question his allegiance then to the United States because he's got Mexican parents?
Well, no, but it's not the same situation.
Well, but it kind of is, right? You're saying that a person's ability to make impartial rulings about something is compromised because of their parents, right?
No, I'm not. I don't think that Trump was necessarily saying that either. But I think it's a legitimate question to say that, look, you've got a guy who's being demonized as an anti-Mexican candidate, and not unfairly. Don't get me wrong. It's not like Trump hasn't been inflammatory, and it's not like you would exactly expect the media to sort of craft the sort of narrative around Trump that has come out because of what Trump says. And honestly, I think most of what Trump says is just idiotic and not thought through. But it's not an unfair point to say that, look, this guy might actually have a prejudice against me just because of what the media says about me or because of things I've said. And I'm not even saying it's an illegitimate thing to have for that judge to have a prejudice against Trump. I mean, Christ, it would probably be quite difficult not to. But that doesn't mean that Trump's saying, well, that means that he might well hold this prejudice against me, which means he's not going to give me an unbiased verdict. That's not an illegitimate thing to say, and it's not specifically racist either, is it?
I mean, I don't know if I agree with that. Like, because he's literally saying that the judge is incapable of making an impartial ruling because of the race of his parents.
Yeah, but he's not though, because what you're implying there is that it's the fact that he's Mexican that prevents him from delivering an impartial ruling. And
Yeah,
that's not what Trump's saying. Trump's saying it's the fact that he's delivering a ruling on Trump himself, who is perceived to be, in a very combative way, anti-Mexican, and therefore people who are pro-Mexican, it's very easy to fall into that kind of dichotomy where you find yourself obviously opposing someone just because they have a different set of opinions to you or things you've heard in the media or whatnot. Trump isn't saying the guy can't do it because he's Mexican. That would be the racist statement. Trump saying the guy has a personal investment in disliking Donald Trump. That's why he can't do it.
Well, but then what about, couldn't you argue that any judge with a liberal background then would fall into the same things? Like, that just seems like an insane precedent to set that, like, every single judge that voted Democrat.
This is why I'm annoyed to have to defend Donald Trump. Sure. I agree with you completely that could apply to almost anyone who didn't vote for Donald Trump. But the thing I want to make really clear though is Trump's statement, as idiotic and buffoonish as it wasn't actually a racist statement. That's the point, though.
I mean, like, he literally said, look, he's Mexican. I'm building a wall. Like, I mean, again, like, the problem is just like, there are so many, right? You agree with this at least. There are so many better ways that Trump could have phrased it, right? It's like, I'm not trying to like nail you to the wall on statements that Trump made, because God knows it was awkward enough watching Pence try to defend his running mate during the vice presidential debate. It's just, do I really think that, like, we're getting into, I guess we're kind of touching on other topics here too, right?
Well, hang on. Let's really nail this one down though, because this is the point. And again, I completely agree with you that Trump, basically every time he opens his mouth, is a fucking train wreck. And especially when he has to talk about someone's ethnicity, it's obviously,
well, like the Muslim family with a dead son, when he said that, well, I guess the wife couldn't speak, maybe she wasn't allowed to, or whatever.
Trump does say a lot of indefensible stuff, but I don't think that means he's a racist. I think it just means he's an idiot who's 70 years old. He's like someone's grandfather who grew up before political correctness. And
sure.
He's also, you can tell he's kind of like a bolshy sort of fighter type, and he's saying things to get reactions.
Sure. Okay. So, go ahead.
Well, I think a lot of it may well have been. I mean, there's this sort of theory that Trump's a 4-dimensional chess player, which, believe me, anyone who's advancing that theory, I think you're giving Trump way too much credit. Yeah. But I do think he knew how to manipulate the media into reporting on almost him exclusively just by saying silly things. But yeah, the specifically though about the Mexican judge, just saying that he's a Mexican doesn't mean that Trump is saying all Mexicans are incapable of impartial rulings.
Well, all Mexicans are incapable of impartial rulings on him.
Yeah. Well, again, I don't think he's saying all Mexicans. I think he's saying that specific man personally.
Well, he did say. I'm not saying in the same interview, he did say all Mexicans and Islamic people and Muslims. I think he said that.
I think I'd have to see it to be able to extrapolate on that. I don't think I've actually seen the interview. Okay. But as I said, it's a thing with a lot of gray areas, and I don't think it's enough to just categorically say, right, boom, he's a racist. You know, it just seems a bit too, well, you know.
Sure. So what I was going to say when I said touching on other topics, because I guess this kind of segues into other things, is the definition of racist. Because I see that there's kind of a schism here, or I don't think we necessarily disagree, but I understand what you're saying.
Let's go. Let's get into it. I want to hear this.
Oh God. So. Listen, dude, this is what social justice warriors fucking suck at, is they try to rebrand and relabel fucking everything, and they don't tell you, so that when you come to a debate, right, you say something like a social justice warrior will say, like, why, black people can't be racist. And you're like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, black people be racist all the time. And like, well, no, because racism equals prejudice plus power. It's like, well, fuck, I didn't know that was the definition. Now, like, yeah. I guess, like, when we talk about racism with Trump, I'm not saying, I guess for you, racist has like that hardline definition of standing on the side of the street with a sign ready to burn black people or whatever. I don't think that Trump is necessarily like the kind of guy that would be like, I fucking hate Mexicans or some shit. I just think he's the kind of guy that would kind of make those offhand comments that give you pause a little bit and kind of question what exactly is going on in his mind, but you probably wouldn't think that he overtly hates, you know, Mexicans and black people, you know?
Honestly, I think that do you remember when he pointed to a black chap in the crowd and said, "There's my African American."
Sure.
I think,
in one of his rallies, yeah.
Yeah. I think that may well be like it. Definitely in my top 5 of favorite things I've ever heard come out of a man's mouth. I think that's just a hilarious thing to say at a public rally in front of tens of thousands of people. But I thought that was also a very telling statement, right? I don't think Donald Trump really gives a shit about someone's race. I think Donald Trump gives a shit about what that person can do for Donald Trump.
Yeah, probably. I wouldn't necessarily deny that, especially considering the class he's a part of and everything as well, right? He's rich as fuck. I doubt that this guy cares much.
And just the reports you get of him, like, kind of screwing over small businesses and stuff like that, I don't think he cares about anything but Donald Trump, you know?
Sure.
Maybe he's got some grandiose conception of America and how to make it great again, but, you know, on a very specific sort of day-to-day level, I think he looks at people and thinks, right, what can this person do for me? And I really think that the way he said it just really... That's what really got me thinking that was the way that
the root of why he acts like that.
Yeah, I don't think he would bring up black people separate to white people unless there was an outside force making him consider these things. And so, like the sort of dopey old grandpa he is, he's sort of like, yeah, well, I have an African American over there, you know, and it's just like, okay, yeah, okay, you do. That's the worst way to phrase it. Yes, we appreciate that there are black people who support you. It's not, you know. It's not just the Ku Klux Klan. This is what I mean. I think that he's been kind of forced into accepting these categorizations of people that he probably doesn't really feel very comfortable dealing with himself, you know?
Sure. I guess kind of something that I guess just when you look at all of these things, especially with the Mexican judge thing, I guess it's kind of related. It leaves a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth when you have people that are, you know, when you talk to Trump and you say like, well, I don't think this guy could give me a fair ruling because he's, you know, Mexican and because I'm doing bad things to Mexico. And then the same people that all support him will turn around and laugh at black people when they say things like, well, fuck, I think we kind of get fucked by judges and the police. And I think we get fucked by the entire law and order system in the United States. And people are like, dude, like, well, just don't commit crime or whatever. Like, just like, dude, don't complain about that. I don't know. That kind of stuff kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth, I guess. It feels a little bit hypocritical, you know?
I'm not debating that. I can completely see why someone would feel that way. And I'm not saying that Trump was doing himself any favors by saying these things. That's the thing. And like I said, I don't want to defend Donald Trump, especially now that he's going to be president.
Yeah.
I view myself as, you know, sort of person who tries to hold power accountable. But God, I've had to defend Donald Trump so much, and I hate it. There is so much you can easily rip out of Donald Trump, and yet people still make things up about him. I don't understand it. You know, why do you need to lie about Donald Trump? But right, okay, so let's define racism. How do you define racism?
I mean, I personally like the classical definition of racism, and then if you're talking about anything in particular, then you qualify it or augment it with adjectives. So, I mean, I consider racism, I guess when you're talking about somebody, and the most important part, or the primary thing you're talking about is like just the color of their skin and determining their worth or whatever. I'm sure you could get a more exact definition, but
yeah, normally it's just prejudice based on race.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
That's the pretty standard definition, and then you've got the SJW definition, which is institutional prejudice based on race.
Sure.
Like you say, that's just an adjective version of the word that you're trying to define.
Kind of, yeah.
By redefining it, it removes the agency of black people from the equation. So
shoot, hold on one sec. I got a quick call. Hold on one second.
Sorry, you go ahead.
Hello?
How's it going, chat? I don't actually have the chat.
Yeah, if you want to, sure.
I'll get up so I can have a look.
Cheeseburger?
Yeah, and a bottle of water.
Sprite?
Bottle of water.
He's not nearly as SJW as you'd expect, is he?
Whew, okay, sorry, I'm here.
No worries, man. Right, okay. So I take it that you don't agree with the new sort of redefinition that excludes black people from being racist, then?
I think that black people can be racist. I think that anybody can be racist by definition. But I do think that there is something to be said for the amount of power you have to exert your racism over someone. I think that that's an important part of the equation.
Okay, go on.
So I guess like the way that I look at it is if you're talking about racism, I think that systems and classes are all very relevant to the conversation. On an individual level, I don't know if it matters as much, but on like an entire class level, I think that the effects of racism are a lot different. I guess so. Like, let me give you an example. So, let's say that you're a black person. Let's say you live in gentrification, kick your family out. You live in a shitty neighborhood, go to shitty school, et cetera, and you've had to deal with hypothetically these, perpetual systems that fuck you your entire life, right? And then let's say that you have a white person, and when they go online, somebody says like "death to all whiteys, fuck crackers" or whatever, right? And they have to read that sometimes as part of online hate. But otherwise, their life is decent, and they're whatever white privilege bullshit you want to talk about, they do okay, right? I'm a little bit uncomfortable when people say things like both of these people have experienced racism. It's like, well, okay. I mean, there are varying degrees of it by quite a large extent,
Right. Okay. So I'm just trying to. How am I going to approach this? I agree that there are. I agree that there are obviously different levels of intensity of racism, and I agree that white people probably do experience it to a less intense degree when it does happen.
Sure.
So, I mean, in a white country, I mean, if we're talking like Zimbabwe, then no, I don't agree.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, in the United States, it's probably less virulent towards white people when it happens. I guess my issue really is I suppose I really take issue with the systems that are keeping them down. That you mentioned. Would you like to elaborate on that so I don't make any assumptions?
I mean, I don't know. There's a few different things you can talk about. I guess for the judicial system in the United States, it seems in every study that I've ever read that when you control for socioeconomic background and whatnot, black people still have a higher chance of being sentenced to worse sentencings for the same amount of crime. You've got racial profiling that goes on with police in certain neighborhoods sometimes. You've got people that push for racial profiling. Trump did it a little bit with the stop and frisk stuff. So I think the judicial system is a little bit, when you look at like economics, it seems like when you look at like income mobility in the United States, it seems like black people have a much higher chance, even when controlling for socioeconomic factors, to not be as mobile moving up through the income quintiles as people of other races for whatever reason. When you look at the housing crisis, I guess the housing crisis in 2007, 2008 in the United States had a hugely disproportionate effect on black families over families of other races. So, I mean, it seems like there are, now I don't know what the exact reason is, but it seems like there are still things at play that kind of work against black people more so than white people.
Okay, that's interesting. I don't know about the judicial cases that you're referring to, so I won't address those. I'm interested in the economic ones though, because this is something I find very, very interesting. I've recently been reading Thomas Sowell, who still is. Sorry, I keep referring to him like he's dead. He's actually not. He's just an old man at this point. But he was very much of the opinion that there wasn't institutionalized racial discrimination economically against black people in the United States, and I really think this might be a case of looking at the results and then reverse engineering to form the conclusion. So, for example, if you say, right, okay, well, black people on average have a lower income than white people, or anyone else, in fact, almost in the United States, and there's very little income mobility, therefore, racism. That I have a real problem with that line of logic.
Okay, so I think that, hold on, let me think about this for a second. I think that there are two different things going on here, okay? One is you have extremists on the right that will say there is no racial element at play. And then you have extremists on the left that will say this is absolutely 100% caused by people being racist towards these people. And I think that the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. So like on another topic that I can pull on that's very similar, I think that we both agree that the wage gap exists between men and women, right?
Of course.
Right. The wage gap exists now. But it's not because, so people on the left will say a woman earns 77 cents on the dollar for every whatever a man was, which is stupid. And then people on the right will say, well, the wage gap doesn't exist at all. That's if you control for it, you can get rid of it, which is also stupid. The reality is men do earn more than women. It's just for a variety of different reasons. Now, whether these reasons need to be, remedied or not, maternal leave or women not negotiating higher pay or salary, whatever, right? These are something up for debate, right? Same thing with the racial elements for the income mobility for black people in the United States. So when I say that there is when they have problems with income mobility, these are undeniable facts of quantitative data, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, why don't they progress through the income brackets as easily as white people? I don't know the answer to that. Is it because there are KKK people standing on the corner screaming at them, don't go get this job? Or is it because when they go to get hired, a white guy sees them and goes, I'm going to pay this guy half, right? Probably not. I don't think. I've never heard of widespread evidence of that. But it does seem like there is a racial component, because when you control for other factors, Black people still have problems with economic mobility compared to white people, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but this is what I mean, though. Well, okay. What about for blue-eyed and brown-eyed people?
What about them?
You don't know, do you?
Hitler? I don't know.
Literally, you've chosen an arbitrary characteristic, in this case, race. But let's choose a different arbitrary characteristic, in this case, eye color. This is my point. But okay, so the numbers, if you look at them, will say something like this. I tweeted it out the other day, but I'll find it so I can show you it later. In the United States, the average household income for a married white couple, I think it was about $78,000 for the total household income. Gotcha. For a married Black couple, it was $66,000, which isn't dramatically different.
Sure.
It's lower, yes, but it's not like impoverished. A household bringing $66,000 is not an impoverished household, right? But when you break it down into different categories, for example, like single Black men earn something like, I think it was $30,000, and single Black women, or single parent, but unmarried, sorry, is a better way of putting it. The unmarried women earn $25,000. So separate, they earn less than they would on average if they'd been married.
Yeah.
Do you think that might be a component?
Oh, yeah, of course. And there's even Black people in the community talking about this. The destruction of the Black family in the United States is horrible. Being from a single parent household is one of the leading indicators of whether or not you'll grow up to be in the criminal system or not. Yep. And Black people have a huge problem with, of course, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and this is the point, because 70% of Black children are raised in single parent households.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a catastrophic weight around your neck.
Yeah, of
before
course.
You've even entered like school, really.
Yeah.
And then if you've got the sort of the dropout rates of Black youth in school are, again, through the roof. And all of these things are not things that people outside the Black community can change.
I'm not sure about that. I think that's a pretty strong statement. I don't know.
Okay, let's go ahead. What's the doubt?
Oh fuck, to dig into a specific area. I mean, the one area that I can point to that I guess I'm familiar with, the way that in most places in the United States, here's one example. I might be wrong about this. I'm pretty sure I'm right about this. I know it's true in my state. In most places in the United States, property taxes go towards paying for school, right? Mm-hmm. The way that it works, though, is your district is cut up so that only the property taxes in a certain district go to that district school. So, for instance, I live in the United States. I'm financially very well off, and I want my child to go to a good public school. So I bought a house in the best school district in my city, right? I bought a house, I moved here, changed his address to here so that he could go to the best school. Well, my kid just got an advantage over some other people because of my socioeconomic background, and I was able to put him in a better school as a result of that.
Sure, but that's the consequence of a good socioeconomic background. The question isn't how good is the school that they can go to. The question is, are they going to stay in school?
Well, but don't you think that the type of school they go to probably has some bearing on that? Especially when you look at like as somebody like I went to private schools my entire life, and I can't imagine the dropout rate was anywhere near high. Like if every other student is there because they're being sent there or because their parents are well off and they're encouraging them to stay in school, and they're of these backgrounds where they're less likely to be diverted into some kind of criminal shit or premarital childbirth or whatever. I feel like having a kid in that school, if I were to take a random kid and send him to a really good school versus putting him into a fucked up school in the suburbs or some shit.
Yeah, but let's assume it is a fucked up school. Let's just assume they're going to a shit school. They've got crappy teachers. They're not very good. Their grades aren't very good.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that makes them drop out is personal choice, isn't it?
Oh. This is going to be what it is. I totally disagree.
Yeah, but we have to accept that they are choosing not to go to school.
I totally disagree.
Right. So, but the thing is, if you say that, then you're saying that these people don't have the agency to make that choice.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't.
That's really
So
racist.
I
No,
understand
hang,
that
hang on,
argument.
to say black people don't have agency is really
Mhm.
racist.
I totally think black people and women don't have agency, right? I understand what you're saying, but I don't think that white people or men have agency either. I don't think very many people have a ton of agency when it comes to determining what they're going to do in life. I think that a lot of that is determined by your background. If you look at the term that they call it is stickiness at the edges. If you look at economic mobility in the United States, people that are born wealthy tend to remain wealthy. People that are born impoverished tend to remain impoverished.
Yeah.
So it's easy to look at somebody going like, well, black people or women get fucked in these ways. So you trying to say they don't have agency? Well, yeah, sure. But I don't think that white people have very much agency either, not any more than these other people. The difference is if you're born into a advantageous situation, you're likely to stay there compared to somebody that's not. So although I am saying that black
Okay,
people or
I
women
think
don't have much agency, I don't think that anybody has much agency when it comes to just like how much choice really, like if we really think of this, how
okay,
much
hang on.
choice really does a 12-year-old have if he's going to drop out of school or not? Like, is he really making this
Loads.
unilaterally? Like,
Absolutely, of course, it's a unilateral decision. It's not like he sat down with the school and was like, "Well, okay, look, I'm thinking of just leaving." He just doesn't go back, right?
okay, so if we were to do, let's pick 100 kids, okay?
Well,
And
hang on.
okay, go
Because
ahead.
I fundamentally disagree with your assessment of agency, and I think that you're conflating systems with the people who have to operate within those systems, and you're talking about these systems as if they're monolithic entities.
Well, they're not monolithic. I mean, there are always exceptions. I mean, I was fucked for a long time in my life. I was a carpet cleaner making $1,200 a month being fucked, and I mean, I'm doing pretty well for myself now.
Jeez, man,
But
I used to clean toilets for £3.20 an hour when I was 18 years old. So
Gotcha,
believe me,
sure.
I know what it's like to be at the bottom. but no.
but I would say that we're like the exception rather than the expectation, right? Like,
maybe. Well, it really depends. That's the thing. It really depends on the type of person. But you can't just say that these people don't have agency because they exist within systems, because that then alleviates them of any responsibility of their own actions, and every action they take is a consequence of their agency. So when a kid chooses not to go to school, he is just expressly using his agency in a way that he has chosen, and I think is an unwise choice.
sure, but your agency is informed by so much going on in your mind that's been shaped by prior experience that like how much agency, I guess this gets into deterministic universes and whatnot, but like
Yeah.
I guess like so like here, let me ask you a question. I have a hard time believing you disagree. Let's say you take 100 kids on the left and 100 kids on the right, okay, and you roll the dice. The kids on the left were all born to dual parent households. They all have one sibling. They all live in middle class societies. They all go to decent schools with decent teachers, and they do sports and all these fun music and band after school and whatnot, right? And then you have 100 kids on the right, and all of these kids were born in shitty cities where the drug trade is alive and well. A lot of their peers are involved in it. They go to shitty schools, right? If you roll the dice on both of these groups of people, like it's pretty obvious that the people on the left are going to be better off than the people on the right, just statistically speaking. Now, that's not to say that every single person on the right, I'm not meaning politically, but every person in that group of 100 fuck people is going to choose, the wrong choice. But I mean, statistically speaking, they are at a much higher risk of doing things like dropping out of school, committing crimes, or premarital childbirth or whatever.
Sure, but these are all failures of an individual's judgment.
I mean, I guess when you can track it statistically based on what happened in the past, I just have a really hard time saying that.
Well, I think this is the problem with judging human interaction by statistics. Because, I mean, look, for example, the marriage rates are pretty much the prime indicator of whether a black child is going to succeed, right? Whether their parents were married is really going to give them the life plan that they're going to have. At least it gives them the sort of platform to then build off of using their agency. There are no outside forces telling people not to get married. So if marriage rates in the black
but that's not true.
Well, go on, what?
Culture and peers can have a massive influence on that, on your desire to get married. I think there's a higher chance of somebody that was.
Hang on. Okay. Now, we're not talking about someone's desire to get married or someone's personal preferences or anything like that. We're talking about their ability to choose. So their ability to say, right, okay, I'm going to, marry this person that I've been dating. We're going to have a child. We're going to raise it. We're going to have 2 kids. We're going to buy a house. We're going to live the American dream. There is no one stopping the black community from doing this. It's their own choice to not do this.
Wait,
You
so
know,
then do they not do it just because they're genetically inferior, or what's the implication then?
why would genetic inferiority creep into this?
Well, because if it's not, I guess if it's not
Rates
the
of marriage in the
background,
black community were higher than in the white community before the 70s.
yeah, for
So
sure.
they're obviously not genetically incapable of marrying.
So then why are they making the wrong decisions then?
Well, that's a good question, isn't it? But I mean, I'm not saying I have the answer.
Well, I guess this is my problem. I
But
think
hang
that
on,
it's.
hang on,
All right,
hang
sorry,
on,
go ahead.
hang on, hang on. Let's before we go on, right. That
Mhm.
that is the sort of $64,000 question, isn't it? Why are they choosing to do something? But there's no doubt that they are choosing to do this. I mean, the white man isn't preventing, like, Felicia from marrying, I don't know, Tariq or whatever, and he's not making, the this one guy go around and shag loads of women and create like 10 baby mamas, is he? This is something they are choosing to do themselves.
But
So,
you just asked why are they choosing to do it, which points to the fact that there
no,
is
you,
something
you
that
asked that. I
instigates.
don't know why they're choosing to do
Well,
it.
you said that was a $64,000 question. You
Well, yeah,
said,
it is,
why
yeah.
are they choosing? So I think it's a bit disingenuous to take two people, give them an option, and then pretend that both of them can weigh both sides of that decision completely equally and pick the superior alternative every time. Like, if you look at the kids growing up in decent neighborhoods and you were to say, compare them to kids growing up in shitty neighborhoods, and you see the shitty ones are more likely to go to crime or whatever, and you ask that kid, like, why did you choose to steal? Like, this kid that grew up, in
Sure.
a good
Okay,
neighborhood and
yeah.
never even had the opportunity to, let alone the desire to or the need to, like, well, of course he's not going to make that choice because it doesn't make any sense for
Well,
his life.
you say that, but rich kids do steal, man.
They
Have you not
do, but
seen?
if we would actually go and look up criminal rates, I'm pretty sure that criminal rates for thievery are much higher in impoverished communities than they are for well-off communities.
I imagine they are. In fact, we know they are. But this is the thing, right? You're basing this on likelihood, and
Yeah.
this is a predictive measure, but it doesn't tell you about the actual reasons people have for making the choices they make. And there's no doubt that these people get to make these choices, and it's not. Don't get me wrong. There are a whole. I don't know why they're doing it. There are doubtless loads of environmental factors, cultural factors, and various outside pressure, economic pressures, all this sort of thing. But at the end of the day, no one can choose for you not to get married. That has to be between you and the person you're in a relationship with. And if you choose not to do this, if you make that choice, then you're making a bad choice. You're going to have to live with the results of that choice. Why?
I guess I don't like this idea that if you take somebody that was born middle class, shows up every day at school, shows up to college, gets the degree, that this person somehow made superior choices their entire life to somebody that ended up in the prison system just because that other guy, just because, of course they didn't.
Of course they did. They must have made
Oh.
superior choices.
Well, but I mean, like, how many choices do you really have to make?
Well, the choice to stay in school or not is definitely one of them.
Yeah, but the challenges that you're facing are so much less. I mean, it's kind of like one guy has to jog a mile and the other guy has to jog a mile uphill, and then you go to the guy that had to jog a mile uphill, and you're like, well, why did you quit halfway, you retard? Like, why did you stop, dude? Like, you had the choice to finish, and it's like, well, fuck, it's a lot harder for that dude to make that choice than it is for the person that just kind of has to show up every day and isn't being presented with the same obstacles or opposition to the correct, quote unquote, correct choices they need to make. Like, it's probably a lot easier when your parents are religious and you have to go to church and you're not supposed to have premarital sex and you go to an all boys high school, right? I went to an all boys high school, right? It's much easier for people like that to make the decision to not, get a girl pregnant before you get married or before you're ready for it, versus people going to co-ed schools in a single parent household with friends that are all fucking, that are idolizing a culture that's all about, fucking everybody. Like, I feel like there's a lot more going on there. It's hard to say that these people are just making the wrong choice,
You're right. That there is definitely the case that someone from a middle class background is obviously going to have more natural advantages before they even take a step on the road to life, But that doesn't mean that they are responsible for someone else making bad choices, because the road they have to walk is hard.
I'm not saying anyone else should be responsible for the choices. I'm just saying that it's good to recognize that people aren't always on the same playing field when they're making these choices.
Yeah, of course, no one is. No one. Every single individual person has got various different strengths and weaknesses, challenges and benefits, and there's no doubt about that. I mean, that's obvious. I mean, I don't think anyone would contest that. But the point is, nobody made the parents of this child not marry. Nobody made this child leave school. In fact, if anything, people, like any authority figure they're going to go to is going to say stay in school, right? even in a bad school, in a bad neighborhood, they're still going to say something like "stay in school" because it
Yeah,
makes
but how much
sense.
do you care about random shit like that when you have influence from family and friends and culture? Like these things are going to override anything that you hear from a random teacher administrative.
Okay, let's assume that's all true. So let's assume in a black community you've got a bad culture that encourages you not to go to school, not to get qualifications, not to get married, and perpetuate this cycle. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
How is that white people's fault?
I'm not saying it's white people's fault. I'm not trying to saddle somebody with blame or burden. I'm just saying that it's an issue that needs to be accounted for and
Yeah,
addressed.
okay. But it's not racism then, is it?
I mean, these are topics that are specifically dealing with people's race. I mean, I'm not even saying that it's necessarily the result of racism. I think I said at the beginning that I'm not saying that there are white people that go through black applications to like schools or jobs and like, fuck
Yeah,
Tyrone or whatever, even though I think there might actually be studies saying that that does happen sometimes. But
There
regardless
are
of that,
individuals
sure.
who do that. But
Sure.
I'm
But
sure
regardless, I don't think that's the reason on the whole. I'm just saying that there is a racial aspect, much the same way with the women example I brought up. I don't think that, that women are hardcore discouraged from every workplace because nobody wants to work with women. There's just probably a lot of other factors come into play, but there seems to be a gender component because you can, follow these hard numbers as to women working less than men. I think that it's the same thing with race. There must be some kind of racial component as to why black people are, in such a worse spot in the United States than white people. Now, whether or not that's the result of people being actively racist and whatnot, probably not so much that, so much as the systems in place that exist right now probably don't serve to better the black community as they do to sustain like the white community.
Right. Okay. So how is this not an argument for black people being genetically inferior?
Because the systems that are in play aren't their genetics.
Yeah, hang on. So you just said that you don't think that the state of certain black communities is necessarily the fault of white people, right?
Well, not now, but I mean, going back a long time ago, probably. I think that slavery and all of that probably played a big role into where people are today.
Married black people here and now in the 2016 do remarkably well. Like $66,000. I would be very thrilled if I was earning that when I was, in my 20s.
Well, but I mean, by your own admittance, that's still 15 or 20% lower than the white family. But sure, I mean, it's decent.
But yeah, but it is. But again, that's probably due to geographic location or something like that, isn't it?
Okay, which is another thing that plays into keeping people fucked, depending on what city you're in.
But I think that on $66,000 a year, you don't consider a household impoverished, do you?
No, of course not.
No. So there's no what's preventing other black people from marrying and forming a solid family and earning a good wage. It doesn't appear to be racism, and you've said that you don't think it's racism.
It probably might. I don't think it is. I don't want to make that statement. I don't think it is. I'm just saying that there is a racial component now.
That's my issue, though, right? So when you say, okay, so it's probably, and let's just agree for the sake of argument, that we don't have enough evidence to suggest that there is, a racism from white people holding down black people, because the black people who are married seem to be getting along just fine. The black people who get married, they stay in school, they tend not to commit crimes, they get along very well, and they integrate into society. And then the people who don't, they obviously have sort of a bit of a catastrophic life, and bad things happen. And then you say that there is a racial component to that. Where is this racial component? Is it in the fact that they are black?
I mean, it might have been in the fact that the laws that existed in the past fucked black people up and put them on a lower area that they're trying to come back from now. I mean, the Jim Crow laws were just
other blacks who get married.
Yeah, but again, I feel like you're looking at all of these decisions in like this hardcore vacuum where every person is capable of making a decision completely independent of their environment.
No, I don't think that at all. I think that every decision you make is based on your environment. For example, the decision to get married, you have to have other people around that you could marry, or the decision for
but it's not that simple. Your desire to get married is going to be influenced by your upbringing and the people around you hardcore.
Yeah, okay, but that's a cultural issue within the community you live in, isn't it?
Sure, but if it's disproportionately affecting the culture of people of color versus the culture of white people, it seems like there's a racial component.
No, just because it's
so it just happens to be a culture difference that only affects black people, but it's not.
Well, I think that it affects black communities, but the thing is, if it affected all black people, I would agree it was a racial issue. I would agree that this is a problem for the on the basis that they're black. the fact that it's, I really think you're hung up on the fact that it's affecting the black community. I mean, if this was affecting the Mexican community, would you say it was a racially, a racial issue with Mexicans, or?
I mean, depending on the issue, sure.
Well, if it's
Affecting if it was the exact same thing, then yeah, sure.
Yeah, but why would it be racial? What component of it is the racial component?
The fact that when you control for all other factors, race is the only thing that explains the difference.
Well, no, it's not. We know that married black people do well. So
but
if
by your own
black people don't do
still
well,
20% not as well as white people.
It's not 20%. It's about 10%. And
well, what were the two numbers you gave? It was
I think it was 76,000 and 66,000.
76,000 and 66. Yeah. So about 10 to 15%.
Sure.
So that's still not.
Yeah, it's not the same,
equal, right?
It's not.
And then also there are disproportionately much higher numbers of, for instance, I think black people make up twice as much of the population percentage as white people, even though they're like a tenth of the population. The black rates.
Sorry.
What?
Where? Sorry.
Where in the United States?
Yeah, but sorry. Say that again. I must have misheard you because it sounded like you were saying there were more black people than white people in the US.
Oh no, sorry. I'm saying that black people make up a disproportionately huge amount of the prison population compared to the race in the United States, right? Mm-hmm. Black people, even when you control for socioeconomic issues, still get unfavorable sentencing from judges and still have problems with economic mobility. Like, I don't know, it seems like if you control for everything else, you're still having differences that are only explained by race.
Yeah, but this is something that's exacerbated by low income due to poor marriage rates.
Well, but not really, because even when you control for low,
absolutely all causative effects, though.
No, even when you control for income, you still see racial discrepancies. Like, that's the problem. If it was all explained by income, then we would just be talking about class, not race.
I'm not actually just talking about income. That's the thing. I really think that there is. I mean, you can see it in almost any community around the world. If you like, for example, in Edinburgh, say in Scotland and the UK, like less than 1%, like black people. And yet people on low incomes tend to be more prone to criminal activity. They tend to be more prone to being single parents. And the children they produce tend to be more prone to finding themselves embroiled in the legal system.
Okay. So
it's not that they're black that this is happening. That's the thing. I mean, it's obviously due to poverty. And if Thomas Sowell is to be believed, he thinks it's to do with the welfare state.
I'm not sure if that's true. I agree with what you're saying, that it has a lot to do with poverty, but when you had laws as recently as 40 or 50 years ago that were specifically impacting black families, I think it's hard to say that, like, well, black people in poverty today are just there because they've made poor choices, when you had laws like in the lifetime of our parents that were directly impacting black families. Like, it seems kind of strange to say that this poverty has just happened to be here and it's just for some reason disproportionately affecting blacks, but it's not because they're black. Like, that seems strange when again, Jim Crow was literally 1964.
Yeah, but it's not because they're black. If white people were
Jim Crow laws and what that were because they were black, yeah.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no, but that was 50 years ago. I mean,
that's 2 generations, dog.
Yeah, but that's 2 generations. That's a long time ago.
That's not that long ago. My parents are that generation. If I was raised by parents that were impacted heavily by Jim Crow laws, I think that would have an effect on me.
Yeah, but you wouldn't, because it was 50 years ago. I mean, you would have to be, what, 40? You know, these kids, like in 2016, who are dropping out of school, they're not being impacted by Jim Crow laws, are they?
I fundamentally disagree. 50 years is a very short time. That's such a short time period. Like,
dropping out of school now being impacted by Jim Crow laws.
Yeah, it's possible.
How?
So if we go back and we look at issues of economic mobility, right? If black people have a lesser chance of moving through economic quintiles as white people, and you have parents or grandparents that were in a disproportionately lower economic class, and you already have trouble moving through the classes because of laws that were created when your parents were still alive, or that were enforced when your parents were still alive, how could you not see that would carry over from just a generation or two? That you would still be impacted by those?
You're undoubtedly going to start at the end of the Jim Crow laws in a less advantageous position.
Sure, and then you think that's just gone after 1 generation?
Well, it's like you said, 2 generations, but...
you think that's just gone after 2 generations?
I don't think it's just gone, but as we said, a married black couple earns $66,000 a year. That's not an insignificant amount. That's not some kind of impoverishment. That's not Like that's not a giant detriment. That's middle class, in my opinion. In Britain, that would be very middle class. You'd be comfortable almost. So, you know, it's one of those things where I think you're trying to make it seem like there's some great overarching force that's holding them back, when these people are making decisions that fundamentally are going to impact their lives. And I'm not saying there isn't a culture around them influencing them to make these decisions. There, of course, is. And, you know, this can be one of the reasons they do it. But that doesn't mean that these are good decisions. And people who don't make these decisions, black people who don't make these decisions, do well in the United States.
Yeah, for sure. But that's like saying that white people that failed college and worked shitty jobs that take up professional streaming do well because I did well, right? I'm not like, because that's what I do. I stream, but I'm not going to advocate everybody to do that. You say that black families, you say that black families are doing okay, but that's the exception, right? The single parent households are much more representative of the black family community than these great middle class black families that are doing fine. And even in these in these middle class black families that are doing fine, even in these ones, they still earn 10 to 15% less than the white family. So even your shining example of black people breaking the cycle are still not caught up to white families. It just seems really
hang on. Let's. They will never earn the same as white people. They will either earn less or more, because you live in a free society. To the idea of thinking they will earn the same is crazy to me. I don't understand why.
But a 15% difference that's dramatic enough that it's probably being explained by something else than random chance. 15% is a pretty big difference in income.
What's the difference between that and women making different choices?
What do you mean?
Well, we agree that there's a wage gap. I mean, if this is like the racial wage gap, why is that not also the result of life choices?
I don't think I've ever been arguing that it is the result of life choices.
I know, and I am. I think that it's probably life choices that put them in those positions. And don't get me wrong, it might be that they come from disadvantaged areas, and these areas don't have the sort of job opportunities that, say, you know, some white kid in California might have. But again, I mean, I imagine there are people in Appalachia who have the same problem, and that's not a racial issue, obviously, is it? You know, that's a poverty issue.
Sure, but
right.
I don't know, man. You've had 250 years for white families to build their wealth and their status in the United States, and black people had Jim Crow revoked in 1964. To say that, like, well, now everything should be fine after 1 or 2 generations, everything will just reshuffle. That just seems insanely.
Look, I'm not saying that. I'm not. You're not representing my position accurately. That's
well, didn't you just say that they had 2 generations, so they should be caught up by now? Is that not what you're saying?
There is no catching up. Okay, this is what I mean. There is no expecting black people to be doing the same as white people in a free society.
Okay, but it's not like they're even like on the way to catching up or on their way to
$66,000 a year is not a bad income.
Just for the people that have bucked the system, though.
That's not people who've bucked the system. That's people who have worked with the system. The people bucking the system are those who don't get married, who don't stay in school, who don't stay within the bounds of the law. They are the people bucking the system.
Depending on the system they're a part of, though, that might be the expected course.
The United States, with jobs, rules, laws, you know.
The United States is not a homogenous society, dude. A kid growing up in the fucking streets of Baltimore is going to have a lot less opportunity to him than a kid growing up to 2 parents living in San Francisco. These people are going to make fundamentally different decisions, not because one is more intelligent than the other, one has more agency than the other, but because both of them are almost as much a product of their environment as they are whatever individual decisions they make.
Of course they are.
So then I don't understand, if you agree with that, if you had parents that were affected by Jim Crow, how could you possibly think that all of that will just be erased?
Okay. There are no kids in school now.
Okay.
There are no kids in school now who have parents affected by Jim Crow.
Okay, but their parents were. I don't think that 1 or 2 generations is enough to just erase everything.
I agree with you. Maybe that's the reason that black people earn like 12% less than white people on average, married families. On
average, when you erase all of the other families that are having problems, not average black people completely, just the ones that are...
We're just talking about married black families in aggregate.
Okay.
So maybe it's the fact that it's only been 2 generations that is the reason there's a 12% difference. I mean, I don't know. I'd have to.
Well, but no, because if we want to talk about the difference, we need to talk about these 2 groups cohesively. You can't just pick one little demographic of black people, and then once this little demographic catches up, especially if it's a minority in the black community, and then say, well, look, all of these problems are solved.
No, I'm not saying all of these problems are solved. I'm actually saying I think we know the root of the problems.
And the root of the problem is,
Parents not getting married.
okay, and why wouldn't people get married?
Well, I don't know. You have to ask them. It's all about individual choice, isn't it? I imagine that a lot of it is, as you say, to do with the culture that they are born and raised in. But
Are you married?
Sorry?
Are you married?
Yeah, I am, yeah.
Huh.
But
I guess
it doesn't matter whether I'm married. The statistics.
well, no, but because people getting married is like such a cultural thing. Like if you look at marriage rates in the United States today, I guess you're a little older than me. Younger people in the United States are not getting married,
I know.
like in hardcore. So are they just making bad choices, or
Well, how well off are young people these days?
probably better than the average, fucked up black single parent
Well,
family?
not by a lot, then. I don't think a barista makes a lot of money, do they?
Yeah, but if you don't have a child and you're not living in the ghetto, you're
Exactly.
probably doing okay.
Exactly.
What?
That's why they can get by. But they've made the choice not to have children.
Ah.
And white people who are single mothers who are white with children. I mean, that's
So, like, if you look at first, if we pull back and look at this from a little bit more abstract, do you remember 10 years ago how everybody was saying that overpopulation was going to destroy the world, that we were going to have 50 billion people, right? Do you know why that ended up not being true?
Because it wasn't factually accurate.
Kind of, because as every single developed nation moves more towards first world lifestyles, what happens is we see that birth rates among wealthy people absolutely plummet.
Yeah.
So what happens is it seems like people that are well off financially tend to have less children than people that aren't. And you see this repeated in every single country around the world, every single first world country, and every single like poor community in these countries are all disproportionately affected by things like birth rates.
Yeah.
So
but that's not a race issue, is it?
No, but it seems to be very heavily tied into socioeconomics. I'm addressing the thing where you're talking about, well, people can just make a choice, but it seems like that you don't have the option to just flat out like make a choice. It seems like your choices are very heavily influenced by your background.
Of course they are, but the people still have the choice. I mean, you can't suggest that because they're poor, people are forced to have children, right?
I'm just saying that the choices they make are going to be far less. I don't think that if I go to the ghetto right now and I find some dude, I don't think that he's going to understand the advantages between explain to me the difference between a traditional or a Roth IRA investment plan in United States investments, whereas a middle-class white person will probably have more of an idea of that. Right? Like, I feel like the background that you're in, dude, I knew idiots growing up that thought that if you fucked somebody in a hot tub, they wouldn't get pregnant because the water was too hot and it would kill all the fucking sperm. Or if a girl rides on top, they laugh, but these are things that people believe. If a girl on top can't get pregnant, right? Or if you have sex, there are lots of like stupid rumors about that. And the chances of you being impacted by a rumor like that are much higher if you're in a poorer community because you don't have access to good education and because your parents are probably stupid as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I totally agree with you. I think socioeconomics does play a huge role in determining the shape or at least the potential course of someone's life. But
so then what do you disagree with?
That's not a race issue.
Well, we're just talking about the impact of the environment on somebody's choice. Do you agree then that your environment does have a significant impact on your ability to make good choices? Because it seemed like before you were saying that if I claimed that I was depriving people of agency.
Well, no, you are. By saying they can't make a choice, then you are depriving them of agency. And I'm not saying they can't make choices. I think they make choices every day, and I think they have to live with the consequences of their choices. And as you say, I think they do make stupid choices. I mean, from my experience, it seems that poor people haven't really got a lot else to do other than drink.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a big thing. Yeah, they don't have much to do besides fuck and
exactly. Get drunk and fuck because those things are free, or not free but cheap. So. I think that probably explains adequately the high birth rates of poor people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And that's one of the biggest things is that people, and even when you look at things like crime, if you have after school activities, if you're part of some athletic thing, if you participate in things with your family, you don't have the time for things like this, for having children out of wedlock and for committing crimes and being involved in fucked up gangs and whatnot. You just don't have the time as a white person because you're doing all sorts of other cool things in your school environment.
Well, it's not necessarily as a white person. I mean, as a black person who comes from a middle-class family, you're in exactly the same position.
Sure, but far more white people are in these advantageous positions than black people. So it seems like there is a racial, I'm not necessarily saying because of racism. I'm just saying that right now there is a racial divide in the United States with these issues.
I'm not saying there's not a racial divide or anything like that, but I'm saying that it's not actually about race. That's the thing. This is why I find this is why, as someone coming from a culture that's not American, I
Mhm.
find like looking at American culture and the way that you guys frame your issues is incredibly frustrating. Because, like I say, you keep coming back to this being a racial issue, but you can't tell me why it's a racial issue.
Okay, no. It might not be a racial issue, but right now there is a racial divide. Let me put it this way. Let's say you take 100 white people and 100 black people, and we'll even reverse it. You take 100 white people and you give them all 20,000 a year salary, and then set them all loose on the world. And then you take 100 black people and you give them all 80,000 a year salary, and you send them loose on the world. I think that 500 years from now, well, 200 years from now, you will probably still see huge divides in wealth, right? With the black people being better off than the white people just because of where they came from and how income mobility works. It might have equalized a little bit.
There are too many other variables to say. That's the problem.
Are there really, though?
Yeah, of course there are. Do these black people end up getting married?
But we've already said, and we both agree, that if you have if you have adequate economic means, you're probably not producing as many children. You're probably getting married. You're probably not, being involved in these cycles that, poor people are more likely to be involved in. So yeah, if you give them money, chances are they aren't going to go down that road of having a fuck ton of children or being super fucked in terms of family structure.
No. Most people earn their money. That's the thing. You don't give them money. Most people earn the money they get.
Okay, if you give them 100 jobs, it's the same thing. If you give 100 black people jobs, they give them 80,000.
People jobs. I would hate to live in the kind of country where they give you a job. You earn the job. You go to the interview.
But for the sake of the example, what I'm trying to say is that if one community has a lot of money and another community doesn't have a lot of money, in 100 or 200 years, it's unlikely that those demographics will have dramatically changed.
Yeah, but this is what I mean about looking at the end result and then extrapolating what the causes must have been.
No. I'm agreeing with you here. I'm saying that the result then there isn't racism. It's just that one group of people had way more money than the other group of people. Yeah. Not a racist thing,
but
right?
Any one of that group could choose to not get married, have children out of wedlock, and then those children to drop out of school. And then in 100 years' time, you'll find those people who did that, their descendants are impoverished.
Sure, but statistically speaking, that's not going to happen.
Well,
I guess in your world, the solution to every problem is to go to every single impoverished community and say, hey guys, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just stop making bad choices and everything will be better. But that's not a realistic solution. That doesn't fix anything.
Yeah, but there is no other solution. There is literally no other solution than the people making bad choices stopping making those bad choices.
Well, but you get them to make good choices. You empower them to make better choices.
Sure. Okay. How do we empower the black community to improve marriage rates?
I mean, education helps a lot.
If they drop out of school, what are we going to do?
Get them better schools, or maybe don't try to push and hurt all the. When people look at desegregation as a way to do it, right? If you've got for instance, I live in Omaha, okay? North Omaha is for black people, South Omaha is for Mexicans, and then west and out further west is for white people, right? I have no doubt that if we were to intermingle our school districts, that you would see better, like black people coming over to the schools in my school district would probably be doing better than if they were stuck in their own school districts. But right now, all of that is locked off because rich people don't want fucking poor people coming to their schools. They want all their money. My kid is fucking. I can go on my email and look up shit from iPads they give them in kindergarten. My kid is in kindergarten, and they get iPads to upload everything, right? There are black kids going to schools where they barely have even fucking up-to-date textbooks. The idea that my kid is going to go through life, quote unquote, making better choices than a kid that grows up in North Omaha is insane. My kid is already starting out so much farther ahead than these other people, and education is supposed to be the great equalizer. Education is supposed to be the thing that ignores your background, that ignores your parents, and gives you the opportunity to make good choices and exceed everywhere. But if the quality of your education is determined by the money your parents make, I don't see how we're just like keeping people locked in the same cycle.
You're assuming something that never really takes hold, because even if these people turn out of a badly funded school, so their education is substandard, they have to finish their education to get it. And if they don't finish it, you can't make them do it. What are you going to do? What options do you have to force black kids to stay in school? What options do you have to force black parents to get married?
I think that the likelihood of them staying in school is probably going to be a lot higher if they're going to a better school with a better community than if they're locked into their impoverished areas and not allowed to attend.
I'm not disagreeing. Other children. Okay, I don't see how by any mechanism that would be in any way considered liberal that you could get black people to just move into like
The easiest thing that I can think of
white neighborhood.
is getting rid of the school district separator. I don't think there should be school districts
Sure,
that are
okay.
separated by income. I think that that could be a really, but nobody wants that. Every time it comes up in Omaha, they call it the one district, one OPS or whatever, Omaha Public Schools or some shit. And every
Yeah,
time it comes up, white people get mad as fuck because they don't want poor kids coming and shitting up their schools. So
right,
you
okay,
just
but it's not because they don't want black kids in their schools, is it?
no, it's because they don't want poor people coming and fucking up their schools.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a race issue; it's a class issue.
Sure, it is,
Right.
but the class issue can also be divided along racial lines, which
Yeah, it
feeds
can be. It can be. I agree. The black
and then it's also kind of hard to say that it's not a race issue when we had just 50 years ago things that were directed at people's race that
yeah, but you don't
contributed
have
to
them now.
class issues. Yeah, maybe.
And-
I don't think we're gonna.
Well, no,
I guess
okay,
here, let's just this fundamental point, because if we don't agree on this, I don't think that anything will come of anything else. So do you don't agree then that economic issues that were racially targeting black people 50 years ago have any impact on black communities today?
I didn't say they don't have any impact.
Okay, that's what it sounds like you
already
keep
said,
saying.
look, it's entirely possible that the 12th percentile difference between married black families and married white families is due to the circumstance 50 years ago of having been under Jim Crow laws. That might be the case, but they're not living under those laws now. And so if they make good choices, they can earn their way up. They can bring themselves out of that problem.
But we've agreed, I think we agreed in the past, that the choices that you make are heavily determined by your socioeconomic background, right? Did we agree on that?
Influence, sure.
Yeah, heavily influenced. And we agree then, I think we just agreed that the socioeconomic background of black people in the United States today can probably be traced back to things like slavery or Jim Crow laws. Right? Do we agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
So how does it not all plug together? If Jim Crow laws were impacting the socioeconomic status of black people in the 60s, right? And those socioeconomic problems are still inherited by today's youth, maybe not quite as bad, but they're still inherited by today's youth. And then today's youth are making choices based on their socioeconomic background. Then how can we just say that these
making
youth
choices based on their background?
But we just agreed with that. We just agreed that they did.
Hang on. Right. I agree with you that someone's socioeconomic background is going to form the culture that they grow up in. And the culture that they grow up in is going to inform their decisions and influence them to a degree that I'm sure most people aren't really aware of. Right?
Okay.
I mean, is there anything there you disagree with?
I don't think so.
Right. The culture.
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. Wait, could you say that one more time? So just so I can.
Right, okay. So there's no doubt that a socioeconomic status affects the culture that the people living in that condition end up producing, right?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that undoubtedly informs their decision. I mean, it's the water they swim through in their daily lives. So it's bound to have an influence on the thought processes, on the decisions they make, right? Mm-hmm. But there's no doubt that there are certain decisions that are deleterious for people. That, and people make these decisions willingly, even often, sometimes knowing that these things are a bad thing, and yet they don't care, and they've got other reasons to do it, right?
I mean,
well, no, that's not a contentious issue, is it?
Well, yeah, but the problem is, again, I don't like that you present these issues in a background. Like, I guess, like, who's more likely to let's say that you get busted for a marijuana charge and you have no way to pay that. Who's more likely to commit suicide? Somebody that lives with a family when they don't have their own house, he doesn't have his own car, he doesn't have a good education background, or somebody that has a family that can just pay for a lawyer to make it all go away, right? Like whose choices are going to be disproportionately, like you say that, like, well, both of them could choose to commit suicide at any point in time, right? But the other person in the fucked background has so much more likelihood of a chance to do it and so many more reasons to make the deleterious choice.
Yeah, but the thing is, you're asking for there is an identifiable causal effect between not marrying and being poor. There is an identifiable causal effect of single mother families producing delinquent male children.
Okay.
And that's not a racial thing. You can find that on any council estate in England, right? There are definite causal effects, right? It doesn't matter if in the United States today, all rich white people decided never to marry and yet have many kids out of wedlock with several different parents, what do you think is going to happen to those rich white communities?
If they have what?
If they cease getting married, but have many children out of wedlock with various different parent figures, do you think that that community is going to remain rich, or do you think it's going to slide down?
It'll probably slide down.
Right. And so,
however, these people have every incentive not to do it. I mean, the choices are not the same.
Sorry, say again.
The choices are not the same. Rich people won't do that because they have so much to lose, and because they know that they have so much to lose by doing it. Whereas poor people don't give a fuck. They're not going to lose anything. They don't have any wealth that they're inheriting or they're spreading on. Like,
yeah, but they've got their futures to lose.
Yeah, but their future looks like shit. So why would they care?
Yeah, but their future looks like shit because of the choices they make.
Not necessarily. You could be born into a situation, but you could be born into a situation where your future looks like shit right from the get-go. If you're born to a single drug-addicted parent in the fucking ghetto, your future already looks like shit compared to a guy that's born with a loving mom and dad that lives middle class. Like, to imply that both of these people are going through life, like they quote unquote are making the same choices. Both of these people will make the choice to finish school or not finish school. Both of these people will make the choices to commit crime or not commit crime. But to pretend that they both have the equal opportunity to make any choice.
I didn't say they had an equal opportunity.
So then what do you disagree with? The poor person will be disproportionately more likely to make bad choices.
Sure, but you're still talking statistics and probability.
Because that's all that matters.
No, it doesn't. No, it's not all that matters. In fact, that it almost doesn't matter at all, because you can, as any individual, can make the choice to choose the statistically less likely thing that is going to be
then it wouldn't be statistically less likely.
Of course it is. Of course.
That would be like me telling every single person.
No, listen, right, stop. Of course, it's still, even if you choose something that's less likely, that doesn't mean it's not statistically less likely. It just means you have chosen the less likely option. It was, if someone, before you'd made a choice, Schrodinger's choice, someone would say, well, obviously he's probably not going to make that choice because 70% of, say, black men aren't married. So if you get married, it doesn't mean that you're statistically likely to get married. You were, until you made that choice, statistically unlikely to get married as a black man, but you bucked the trend. You ended up choosing the road less traveled, and you'll probably find yourself better off for it in the end. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but the statistics aren't arbitrary. They're not just there to account for numbers, right? There are usually rationales behind the statistics, right? If people are statistically more likely to get into car accidents because they get more sleep or less sleep, you wouldn't just tell the people that are driving tired to crash less, right? Or say like buck the trend, right? There's a reason. What I'm saying is there's a reason why these statistics exist. They're not arbitrary. It's not like somebody arbitrarily said like, well, 30% of black people are this.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'm not saying the statistics are invalid.
But you're making it you're making it sound like the statistics are completely arbitrary. That somebody just has to simply make a choice and surpass their background.
Okay. Statistics are not arbitrary. They are the collation of millions of individual actions.
Okay.
Right? Through however many individuals were surveyed or categorized or whatever, these are all this is the end reading of what we ended up with after all of those people made all of those decisions in all of those individual circumstances to give us the overall numbers, right?
Okay.
So each individual choice isn't arbitrary, and the consequences of those actions aren't arbitrary. And so when the people at the Department of Justice or whoever are tallying up the statistics, these are not arbitrary numbers, but they are also not telling you anything about any one case.
Of course not, which is why you have to dig in deeper and figure out why these stats exist.
No, you can never look at statistics to find the cause of individuals' problems.
No, not the cause, but that's your starting point.
Yeah, but we do know what the cause is.
But what is the cause?
You've told me the cause. The cause is impoverishment, usually.
Okay, but then what's the cause of the impoverishment? You have to go another level back.
I am. It's the fact they're not getting married. If they get married, they're not impoverished. Now, hang on. How? Whoa. Let's stay here, right? So
okay.
We know, like I said, we know if they get married, they're not going to be in poverty, right?
Yes. So why wouldn't all of them just get married then?
Okay, well, I have the answer for you, but you're not going to like it. It's the welfare state.
Okay.
And that's not coming from me. That's coming from a black professor of economics.
Okay. I
So-
don't think that is an agreed upon thing by all economists. So how does the welfare state do it?
Well, basically, most people stay in marriages because they have to.
What do you what?
Most-
Why do people get married?
Because it's advantageous for them to do so. And
Sure.
as soon as there is an option that is maybe not a great option, but it's obviously not a terrible option, well, there are large portions of people who take it.
Okay. How does the welfare state? I'm sorry, one more time. So how does the welfare state keep black people from getting married?
Well, it incentivizes them to not need to get married
Why?
because financially they can get by without.
I mean, I think that anybody could get by financially without getting married, though. I mean,
Not
if you
if
look
you've
at
got
divorce,
3 kids from 3 different fathers.
I guess I'm not connecting the. I'm
But,
not
okay.
connecting how the marriage, how getting married impacts any of these things.
Okay, well, getting married is without a doubt one of the best things you can do in your life financially.
Wait, why? I don't know if that's true. I don't think
I
that's
know, it's
true.
absolutely true. The statistics absolutely bear it out.
Okay, whoa, but you're putting the cart before the horse. Wealthy people tend to get married. That doesn't mean that
We're not
becoming
talking about
married
wealthy
makes you
people.
wealthy people.
We're not talking about wealthy people.
Well, but we are. People of
We're not
higher classes tend to get married more
We're
than
not
people
talking
of
about
lower
high classes.
classes.
We're talking about people earning $60,000 a year.
Sure, that's what I mean. Middle class and up. People that are financially well off. I don't mean rich. I'm saying that people that are financially well off are more likely to get married than people in lower class societies. That doesn't mean that getting married all of a sudden gets you out of it. It just means that if you're wealthy, you're more likely to get married. Getting married doesn't automatically confer that
You're
wage
actually
onto them.
putting the cart before the horse here. Being
Wait,
no. Honestly, getting married is one of the biggest indicators of future wealth. So, I mean, people.
yeah, but getting married didn't. I don't. I understand the tax code in the United States much better than the average person. I don't understand like where this getting married all of a sudden gives you wealth, especially when the divorce rate in the United States is 50%, and the average cost of a wedding is in the beginning 5-figure range.
And yet, married couples always earn more than singletons.
Okay, I mean,
So-
are you talking about dual earners or?
Oh, well, there is also that. I mean, like,
Well, we're in really big correlation causation territory. Okay,
Sure,
if
no,
people that are people that contribute, I can make a statement that I'm almost 100% positive is true. I'll put my on it. People that
Right.
contribute to retirement plans are more wealthy than people that don't contribute to retirement plans. Right? Would you
Mhm.
agree with that? Just
sure
because you
that's true.
contribute to a retirement plan though doesn't make you wealthy, right?
No.
So contributing to a retirement plan isn't the single biggest thing that will make you wealthy, even though I bet contributing to retirement plans are a massive indicator of future wealth. Much the
I
same way
imagine
that
it's something that people who
Sure.
are doing well do. isn't it?
exactly, like people that are doing well will be more likely to get married than people that are not doing well.
Yeah, but I think that that's the same problem that you're having, that you're attributing there. There is nothing stopping poor people getting married. And before the
We're back to this again.
listen, right? Weddings don't have to cost a lot of money. They can be cheap. And before the 1970s, black families had a higher rate of marriage than white families. But that was directly after Jim Crow. So these people would have lived under Jim Crow. So I don't, they weren't earning huge amounts of money. If you look at the average income for black families then, it was much lower than it is now. It's just that for some reason in the 70s, the rate of marriage in the black community dropped off completely. But and literally 15 years later, you can look at, I'll find you the graphs, I swear to you, right? You can look at the crime rate amongst young black males, and it's almost a sort of direct inverse correlation.
I don't disagree with you. Everything that you're talking about, factually, I agree. Black marriage was on the rise, and then it took a sharp decline, and that single-parent households are a massive indicator for crime.
It was just high. It was just high.
Well, it was. I think it was higher in the 60s than it ever has been.
Yeah, okay, maybe, but
Yeah.
the point is, it was before the 70s very high, and then for some reason in the 70s it broke down, and now it's incredibly low, and we
Sure.
can see the socioeconomic consequences of that.
Sure, there are a lot of people that even point to racial issues for that kind of stuff, like gentrification, like kicking people out of black communities in order to make them more white friendly, and boxing black people up into these districts and segregating them off into shitty school districts.
I'm not saying that's not happening. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it has an effect. But what I am saying is that black people don't have to let this happen to them.
Okay, But the difference is, if a black person, quote unquote, lets it happen to them, they will be fucked. But if somebody born into a middle class lets it happen to them, they will be fine. That's the difference.
Well, not necessarily fine, but they'll be less fucked. I agree.
No, they'll be fine. If you're born middle class, you just have to show up every day to your life and you're going to be okay. You'll make it. You'll be okay, right? If you blow up with a wealthy family, mommy and daddy will pay for school for you. You don't even have to get a real job until you're out of school, right? You'll probably be doing okay. You'll get your whatever random engineering degree and you'll go and you'll work a job.
Hang on. I was born middle class and things were not that simple at all for me. So I don't think it's I don't think I'm necessarily any great exception either. But I will agree that on average, middle-class people will do better in their lives, I'm sure, right?
Okay, yeah, sure. And we tend to focus on our own problems. I had problems growing up as well. I think my parents were middle class, at least for half of my childhood. However, I'm not going to try and say like, well, I had problems growing up. I'm sure that if I got over these problems, I could get over any problem being in any community, right?
I'm not saying that's the case, right?
Sure.
But,
like, are your parents together or whatever?
Yeah, they are, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, like that's a massive advantage right there, right? I'll say that, right? I had problems growing up, but I have a mom and a dad that both love me. Like I can't even imagine not having that advantage in my life. I can't even imagine.
I actually can, right? Because my cousins didn't necessarily have that advantage, and I've seen what's happened to them. And I mean, they're obviously white, and
so are they stupid?
It's very comparable to what I hear. The statistics coming out of the black community, they almost like completely apply to some of my cousins, right? And I know it's down to bad parenting because I saw, and growing up, every time that something would happen, I would see the bad parenting firsthand, right? And so when I hear about, black community, 70% single mothers, these kids dropping out of schools, they're joining gangs, I know that's due to bad parenting. And
okay, so, but then what you're just saying at the beginning of this argument, you said that I was removing their agency. Now you're telling me that they're making choices as a result of bad parenting. How are you not removing their agency?
No, they're expressing their agency, but they're kids. So they're expressing
this is my art. You're taking my argument from the beginning. That's what I said. Remember, I specifically said, how much choice does a 12-year-old have really when it comes to dropping out of school?
Listen,
right? These are the same arguments that I used at the beginning of the argument.
Listen, I'm not talking about the kids. I'm talking about the parents.
Who were, when they were younger, kids who were being raised by parents.
They have every opportunity to get married. I mean, there's nothing preventing them getting married other than cultural factors. But you just said that
bad parenting is influencing these children. So at what age does the influence magically drop off?
It influences them and they will end up making bad choices. But that's not to say they don't have agency.
But their agency is heavily influenced by their parents or their culture or their education.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Their agency is influenced by their parents and their culture.
Okay, so I don't think we disagree on anything then.
We don't. So, okay, let's tie it all back then.
Okay.
How can the black community pull itself out of poverty?
I don't know if it can just pull itself out on its own because all of these systems have the appearance of perpetuating themselves. It's, again, stickiness at the ends. People that are rich tend to continue on being wealthy. People that are very poor tend... No. I'm saying that people at both extreme ends of the economic spectrum tend to continue on that end of the economic spectrum.
They do.
So it seems like you need some kind of... So if you look at the fact that black people today who had bad parenting, whose parents were children that had bad parenting, whose parents grew up under Jim Crow laws, that it seems like there are disproportionately bad issues impacting black America that have to be accounted for or pushed away by some external force because left to their own devices, they'll just continue to be fucked because of all of these generational influences that have compounded into them making bad decision after bad decision.
Okay, but we know that they're going to have to get married.
Maybe. I don't even know if that's an important thing. It might not even matter.
Absolutely is. It absolutely is. Well, I mean, think of your own upbringing.
Sure.
You were privileged because you had both parents there and they loved you. I was the same. I was very, very lucky to have the parents I have as well. And
sure. I mean, I have a child right now and I'm not together with the mom. But we get along very well, and we split him like I have him 3 days of the week, so I'm pretty sure that even though he's part of a separated household, he's probably doing a lot better than a family of people where you never see the dad again, or where both parents fucking hate each other. Right?
Because he has two parents who love him.
Sure. So what if he didn't? Then the chances of him growing up to be fucked up are so much more.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, right. And so that is a message that needs to be told to the black community, because no one can make them marry or stay together or at least be good parents. You can't force these people to do that.
Well, but
You
it seems
can-
like the first thing would be to stop having kids, which is an education issue, right? Like, not stop having kids seems like it would be the first thing. Like, that's actually, if you want to look at the big difference between
Absolutely.
wealthy people and poor people, it's not getting married, it's having children. Wealthy
Yeah.
people tend to not have children. Like, poor
Okay,
people,
why do people have children out of wedlock?
because they have nothing else to do.
No, because they can.
Yeah, well, but largely because they have nothing else to do as well.
What
right?
do you think they did before the welfare state?
I don't, the same shit. I don't know. There's not much of a welfare state in Africa, but those people have a fuck ton of children as well.
Yeah, but Africa's got its own separate set of problems. We're talking about.
But it's the same thing in India and China as well. It's the same thing in all of these developing nations. Tend to have massively huge birth rates, but as soon as a country moves into becoming more wealthy, and you can follow all the numbers on this. There's a sick TED talk with a guy that goes over all of these numbers. That every time nations become more wealthy and people in general become more wealthy and groups of people become more wealthy, they tend to have less children. So it seems to that poor people, whether it's because they have less shit to do or less opportunity in life, have nothing to do but fuck a ton of people. It seems like they're more prone to having tons of kids, which also perpetuates their cycle.
Yeah, but they're only prone to doing it because they do have the option of doing it.
Sure.
No, look. Before you had like a welfare state, say like 1910 or something like that, right?
Okay.
You had huge amounts of social stigma against single mothers, right?
I mean, there's still social stigma against single mothers.
There is, but
in the
it's
United
nothing
States
like
today.
it was now. It was then, you know. But you would not be a. I mean, to be a single mother in an English speaking country in around like the turn of the 20th century would have made you like a pariah almost, like a stig of the dump. You would have been looked down upon by almost everyone around you, right? And that created an incentive to either not have kids out of wedlock. Well, a to not have kids out of wedlock, and B, if you get married, get pregnant, you have to get married. I mean, that was, you know, shotgun weddings and all that, right? So it's that was a societal pressure forcing people to get married. But that getting married and, you know, two parents raising their children is actually a good thing for those people, whether they want it or not, really. And it ended up creating stable families and stable communities. And as soon as you take away the pressure, the incentive to get married and replace it with an incentive to not marry, then look what happens. I think the black community is a great example of exactly what's happened because of that.
Okay, so my solution is desegregation of education and pushing some kind of public policy towards getting these people on the right track. Your solution is that we start to
your public policy to get people to
some kind of public policy for assistance or something to move these people back into the right track. And your solution is to socially stigmatize single mothers. Is that?
I didn't say that was my solution. I said
but that's what you brought up as part of
that was a method of incentivizing. I don't
sure.
really like
What method of
stigmatizing of anyone.
So what is your method of incentivization then?
Well, it's a tough one, isn't it? It's a really difficult.
I don't think it is.
Of course it is. I mean, how can it not be? How can it not be a difficult question? You know, I mean,
I think a good start is desegregating education institutions. That would be like a step one for me. I think it would be a really good step.
Okay, but how is that going to get black couples marrying?
I don't know. I don't think the black couples getting married is a big deal.
Yeah, but it is. It absolutely is. There's no question of it. We know that single parent, female led households produce delinquent young men. Delinquent young men commit crimes. They ended up recidivizing. They ended up going to jail.
Okay, well, I'm not trying to pull like a big name, but you understand the difference between correlation and causation, right?
Yeah, but this is causative. I mean, you can go.
No, well, you don't.
There's no way that you can. Social scientist and ask them, and they will tell you it's absolutely causative.
Okay, they may be able to tell you that Actually, I'm not even sure if I agree with that, because I'm willing to bet that if you control for socioeconomic factors, I bet you that there are single parent households that actually do exceedingly well. Single parent households.
Not going to be
when you control for socioeconomic factors. So you can't even necessarily say that there's a causal link between having a single parent and being a crime lord or whatever, or being somebody that commits a lot of crime, right? There are a lot of other things going on. I'm just saying that, like, just because somebody gets married, if wealthier people tend to get married, then of course they're going to be doing better post-marriage than people that don't get married.
We're not talking about wealthy people.
When I say wealthy, I'm sorry. Every time I say wealthy, I mean middle class or above.
We're not even talking about middle class, right? We're talking. No, look, there is absolutely a correlation between poverty and crime. I mean, no one's debating that, right?
Okay, sure, but I don't think like two poor people getting married aren't all of a sudden going to elevate them to non-poverty. I don't think
two poor people getting married puts them a step above not being married. I mean, A, they've only got one household to pay the rent for. B, they'll end up having two incomes, even if one isn't like the same.
Sure,
as
but I
the
mean, you
other.
can live together with someone without being married and still.
Well, yeah,
accomplish
okay,
it.
but marriage is the way we gather the statistics. I'm sure that there are going to be cohabiting couples who are in the same position, basically, but don't have the formal stamp. But I guess
Oh, hold on. Oh, because now I'm really okay. Because I thought this was all about getting married. So now we're just talking about people living together.
Well, marriage is just a convenient way of saying cohabiting parents in a relationship with one another.
Well,
Whether they're actually like whether they have a certificate or not.
I'm only going to
irrelevant.
speak.
It's the-
Hold
it's the
on.
result
I'm
of
only
the-
gonna, I just have to speak this for a quick second because it might be different in the United Kingdom. I'm not trying to condescend or anything. In the United States, marriage is a very, very, very big thing. Arguably the most important contract you'll ever enter into in your entire life.
It's the same here.
Property, property becomes shared. Finances.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we have exactly the same thing here. That's
okay. So cohabitation and marriage are two very, very different
well,
things.
not necessarily. Actually, you have like no. You have. I mean, I don't know whether you have in the United States, but I would be amazed if you don't. If
law
you
marriage?
cohabit for a certain period of time, basically you're effectively considered married.
In some places, that's called common law marriage in the United States. In some places, that's kind of considered. But again, like being married and cohabitating are two very different things, and they carry. I don't know.
But this is a difference without a distinction, really, because the point
well,
is
there's a big distinction,
no,
though.
there's not what I'm trying to get across to you, right? Kids who grow up without strong fatherly influences, young men who grow up without a strong father figure, who grow up in poverty, are much more likely to commit crimes, right? That's not a contentious thing to say, right?
Maybe the problem now is that now I see that you're trying to draw causal links in all of these arguments where I was understanding this as correlation. So when you say like a young man growing up without a strong father figure is more likely to commit crime in a poor neighborhood, I bet there is a very strong correlation there because the kind of mother that would give birth to a child and not have the father around is probably the kind of mother that would raise a delinquent child. Right. Whereas if you control for socioeconomic issues, I'm sure that you could find a successful single mother that has children that don't grow up to become criminals. But the kind of person that's more likely to have a child out of wedlock and is more likely to not have the father in the life at all is the kind of person that's more likely to raise a delinquent child. This is correlation versus causation. Right.
Look, I appreciate that. Right.
Okay.
And I'm saying I'm certain there is a causal link between the things I'm saying.
If there was a causal link between single parents giving birth to delinquent children, that means that I shouldn't be able to find successful single parents in wealthier areas. Are you saying that that's the case? Because that would be the definition of a causal link. You would be saying that single parents directly contribute to.
I walk that back. Okay.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
But the fact that it is overwhelmingly statistically linked must mean there is some kind of effect there that is accounting for that. Otherwise,
sure. I'm just saying that you have to be really careful. I remember that because I was lucky enough that I got to take a psych class in high school, right? This is just high school psych, but like in looking at some of these experiments, right? There used to be a really popular thing where children that got less amount of sleep than other children tended to perform worse in school, right? And there were a lot of studies about that. And the surveys and the stats pointed to, obviously, if you get less sleep, you're going to do worse in school. It was just obvious. There's a causal link, right? Well, that ended up not being the case at all. Even though lack of sleep was a very good indicator for doing poor in school, what actually was happening was the children that were lacking sleep, a lot of them were lacking sleep because they had to pick up jobs during school, and that the socioeconomic background ended up being probably the causal point of failure there in the school rather than the lack of sleep. That there were wealthy kids that still had plenty of time for school but didn't have to work and had parents that supported them and wanted them to study that were doing well in school lacking sleep. Right. So the causal link there is deceptive, right? So if you look at something like people that are married tend to be better off, well, you can't just say that marriage causally will cause you to be better off. There could just be a higher probability of a successful person wanting to get married than an unsuccessful
there could be, but there are obvious.
Putting the cart before the horse.
But there are obvious reasons that explain this. I mean, just the fact that you've got two incomes in one household is a huge boon to any family.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I mean. I mean, like say, correlation does not necessarily imply causation, but when you can identify like individual factors that obviously are advantageous, then I don't see why we can't suggest that marriage is the reason, or marriage, But
I guess like what I'm saying is that I know what you mean. What I'm saying is that you can't just take two people who are totally fucked in every part of their life, commit crime, drop out of school, and do all these things, and then just throw them in a house together and say, if you guys get married, it'll fix your problems. What instead would probably happen is you would educate these people, show them the importance of having protected sex, show them the importance of education, and that these two people, as a result of learning that, would on their own come to the decision that getting married or being in a cohabiting situation without having tons of kids is probably beneficial. But it's not the fact that you forced them to get married that gave them these better lives. It's the fact that you educated them enough such that they were able to see that the marriage leads to the better life than having kids with a bunch of other people.
No, listen, I'm not saying that these people don't need to be educated. I mean, everything that I'm saying is predicated on the idea that we are going to have to educate these people, right? But we have to be able to identify what the problems are, where the breakdown is occurring. And I really think it's raising children in a single parent household headed by a mother that's causing many of these problems. And it's not just in America, it's literally any community where you have this sort of thing happening, it produces the same results. So, and understandably, I mean, you're a parent, Jesus, you must, how difficult must it be to be the one person raising a child? I mean, it must be a hell of a hard job.
Well, I mean, it depends on your situation. I mean, if you're financially well off, it's probably a hell of a lot less difficult.
You're not going to be financially well off. The chance that you're going to be struggling.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, but if you are financially well off, yeah. So what you're just talking about, chances are you're not going to be financially well off, makes it sound like the economic thing is the leading indicator there of the difficulty, not the fact that you're the single parent. Right? The fact that you said that. For instance, if I were to say, like, imagine how difficult it would be, to raise a child with no fucking money whatsoever, like that would be really difficult, right? Like you would just say, like, yeah, that would be difficult, period. But now if you say, imagine how difficult it would be to raise a child as a single parent, well, I don't know. I mean, if you were pretty wealthy, I don't think it would be that hard.
Yeah, but most single parents aren't pretty wealthy. That's the point that I'm trying to make.
But the point that you're making inadvertently is that wealth there is the big indicator of your success, not whether or not you're a single parent.
Yes, absolutely. Wealth is the indicator. Yeah. And the only way to get people out of poverty is to stop them having children out of wedlock.
I agree with that.
Make them stay in school. And get the parents married so they have this extra wealth.
Or rather, can we agree on this? Instead of saying get the parents married, educate the parents to a state to where they understand that getting married is the superior choice.
Right. But okay. But then you have to make sure that that is the superior choice.
Well, it is. We all agree with that.
Not necessarily, right? Not necessarily. If you're, I mean, for example, in this country, I don't know what it is in America, but in this country, the conservative government recently, to the howls of the left, and I can understand why they're saying this, but it's very short-sighted. They've put a cap on the maximum amount of benefits that any household can receive at £25,000, which is about, I don't know, probably about $35,000, $30,000, something like that.
Isn't it like $20,000 now? Didn't you the pound? No, I'm just talking.
And that is a lot of money. I mean, okay, it's not a lot of money, but it relatively speaking, it's a lot of money because, I mean, if you get a job for minimum wage, you're not earning that much. So if you're a parent, you're a single parent, and you're thinking, well, I mean, I'm going to have to earn a significant amount for it to be worth my while to go and get a job, because a job's a lot of effort, or you could just collect free money from the government. So it's a lot more effort to get a job and then structure your life and family as a single parent getting that one job than it is just collecting your welfare check. You might not have enough have that much in the long run, and you've certainly got no future prospects, but in the immediate time, it's much easier.
I disagree with the notion that people choose to live in a welfare state. I don't think that anybody would make the choice to lock their life in perpetually with welfare. I think that it happens.
Loads of people who do this. I promise you. I like I said, I grew up in a lovely middle class home because my dad came from a council estate, which you could consider them like the projects or something in America. These are like the lowest income housing areas, and they're owned by the local councils for people who are too poor to rent their own houses. Okay,
but what I'm saying is I think that there are better reasons why these people make choices than just the fact that there is a safety net there. I personally, I'll go anecdotally, but I'll extrapolate. I don't think. Well, okay.
Let me finish, right? And so most of my family has had to, if they've made it into the middle class, they've worked very hard to do so. I mean, my dad joined the Air Force at 16, and he was in the Air Force until he was about 54, something like that. And so he spent a lot of time working very hard, and we spent a lot of time moving around. And so now, whenever we go back to where he came from and where my mum came from, similar sort of story, I would see my cousins who didn't have the advantage of a hardworking set of parents, and they were, well, poor. And I know that some of my cousins specifically were like, well, if I have children, it's no big deal, even if I'm not married, because the state will pay for me. And they have friends. I mean, they will tell me stories of like, oh yeah, Sandra, yeah, she went out on Saturday specifically to try and get pregnant, because then the council will give her a house. This thing, when you are that poor, that looks like a good option.
Sure. So what I'm saying is that if you back up a little bit, that people that are of a certain level of education wouldn't be making these choices. These are things that people kind of quote unquote choose because of where they're already at in life. That I don't think that if you put anybody through a decent education system, that in college they would be like, okay, I need to pick my majors, so I'm going to weigh the 25,000 pounds I could get on welfare versus the 28,000 pounds I could get with this teaching degree. I'm not really sure what I want to do. Like, I don't think that these people exist, right? Now, I'm sure that there are people that are fucked economically that probably take advantage of these welfare systems, but I think that these people would be fucked whether or not that welfare system existed. Like, I don't think that if you remove that welfare system, these people are all becoming electricians and plumbers, right? Or if you get rid of that welfare system, these people are all going to school, for the next 15 years to become the most highly educated people in society. These are people that are going to
have normally got married.
I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. In generations, they would have had to get married. They would have had no choice. They would have either got married.
If you're talking about forced marriages, then out of that, is that even any better?
I didn't say that it's a good thing. Look, I'm not arguing for a moral good here, right? I'm arguing.
But no, I'm just arguing that concept of living off welfare. When you present it that way, there are a lot of people that have no idea what welfare is or how it works. That there are people that look at these things and like, oh well, all these people are just choosing to leech off welfare, so we need to take it all away. Well, that you're making it sound like these people are choosing welfare as an alternative to something else. Oftentimes, that welfare is all they have.
Yeah, but some of them are choosing this.
So, I mean, I'm sure there are some. I'm sure that I can find some white people that are pedophiles. Yeah, but that all white people are pedophiles.
No, listen, right. I'm not. This isn't like fraudulent or anything like that. This isn't them committing fraud. This isn't them doing anything illegal or not even really abusing the system. They're just choosing the system, and that's what the system's there for. If for like single mothers to have their own council house and feed their children, even if the dad isn't around, because we want a certain standard, a minimum standard of living for children in this country, and I'm sure yours. But that doesn't mean people aren't choosing it. They are choosing it, and they're choosing it often because they don't want to marry the person they've had children with.
Yeah, I feel like we're coming back to the same thing, that if we keep crossing paths at the choice thing, I don't think we're ever going to agree on anything else. If we don't agree on that. And I mean,
I'm not saying these aren't bad choices.
But you're talking about these people are making these choices. And what I'm saying is that like not all choices are made equally. Like that's why I'm saying like a person going to school is there isn't some chick growing up in Germany who's 22 years old, about to graduate with her bachelor's, who's going to quote unquote make the choice to get fuck one dude and get married and be poor or whatever, or something crazy like that, right? Or fuck a bunch of people and live on a welfare state. These people aren't making these choices. The only people that are quote unquote making the choice to live in these horrible fucked up welfare states are people that are already fucked up. So when you talk about these people are making the choice to do this, I don't know how much I agree with you, like that they're just making the choice.
Listen, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. Someone who is on a career path of some form, who has finished school, they've gone to university, they're probably not going to make choices that are going to fuck up their life, right, and their future.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, these people come from a situation where getting a council house, or like what would you call it in the United States?
Section 8 housing for
getting Section 8 housing. That's their goal. That's what they're trying to achieve.
I've never read anything that would give me any indication that this is a widespread thing, that people actually go out and attempt to get pregnant in order to procure Section 8 housing.
In the United States, but there are certainly more than enough people in the UK, and again, they're low class women. They're lower class, like working class women who aren't going to get married. For
I mean,
whatever
like
reason.
again, it might be possible, but these are edge cases that I wouldn't really. I don't
Yeah, but
I
the
don't
thing
think it
is-
does much to discuss them.
Yeah,
Like,
but
I
the
mean,
thing
I'm
is-
sure there are people trying to abuse any situations anywhere. Like,
Of course there are, but in the United States, 70% of black children are raised in single parent households.
okay.
So, and most of those are single mothers. So, you can't say, well, how widespread is this? Well, we know exactly how many people have taken advantage of
But we
this
weren't
system.
talking. Well, all of these people are taking advantage of the system. Before, you made it sound like people were intentionally going out of their way to destroy their lives to take advantage of welfare,
No, of
not
course
people
not.
that were
This-
legitimately relying on the system.
No, these are people who are relying on the system. And the
Okay, well,
choices
hold on.
they
Because
make-
the example that you gave me from the UK were people that were legitimate. The personal example you gave was you knew somebody or whatever that went to get pregnant to get a house. So these
Yeah.
are a lot different than people that end up in these fucked up situations, rather than the people trying to directly
but
capitalize on it.
the reason they make the choices they make is because that is a thing that exists. They
But the
know-
thing I'm
they
saying is,
know
I
that
don't
they're not
think
gonna starve and
anybody
be
that's
homeless.
well off is. I mean, I don't like that alternative then. So, like, let's just get rid of all the welfare, so they know that if
I
they don't
don't.
work hard and do it, then they'll starve to death. Like,
Yeah,
that
no,
doesn't
no.
seem to be
Listen,
like.
right? I just want to be clear. It's not that I like any of this, right? I'm a liberal. I'm very much pro social healthcare, for example, very, very much, and probably because I'm British and we're totally indoctrinated into it. But it's one of those things that almost everywhere on earth in first world countries has it, except for the United States. And it's one of those things that Europeans kind of look down their noses at US people for. I'm not saying that I like any of these things, but what I'm saying is we have to be realistic about what these things are and what they're doing. And I think that we do have enough indicators to suggest some kind of causal effect. And I think that, I mean, like I said, I don't know what the solution is necessarily.
I think the only indicator that you could get that would establish a causal effect between welfare and people
It might not be
choosing to live
100%
off it
or anything like that.
is if you get people that are in otherwise advantageous scenarios that abandon their lifestyle to live off the welfare. And I would be shocked if you had anything that indicated that people that were doing decently abandoned their lives to go and live off the welfare.
That's of course not going to happen. And then
Well, but there should be. If there is a causal link to people wanting to choose to live off that welfare, then you should be able to find people from all.
Look, I explained to you why people do this. It's because you get a certain amount of money, and to earn that much money working 40 hours a week is, I mean, you're barely going to earn more than that on a minimum wage job in the UK, right? So I mean, in a lot of ways, there is, I mean, and this is, believe me, I was unemployed for a long time. I was absolutely piss poor for a long time. I lived in shared accommodation all through my 20s. I was absolutely fucking rock bottom because I was lazy, frankly. I didn't want to do any work. I just wanted to get stoned, play video games, and chill out with my friends. And that's what I did, right? Bad choices, I agree, but what are you going to do? Fuck, I don't know where I was going with this. Right, okay. So the amount of money I was getting, if that's not superseded by the jobs around me that I'm able to get, or at least not superseded by a significant amount. I mean, for example, if I'm getting like, I don't know, like say I was getting like £800 a month or something, I'm not going to get a job that's £900 a month, but 40 hours a week. When I'd get,
but that would be an issue. That would be an issue of education there then, because when you're not working, you're losing value to your life. Right?
Sure.
What do you think if you were to go to apply for a higher up job or whatever, and you've got 4 years work experience versus 4 years of collecting unemployment checks?
Totally agree. Totally agree with you, right?
Yeah. So this isn't an issue of like, well, the welfare is fucking these people. This is an education issue where people don't. This is why alimony exists. Is because people sacrifice parts of their life to raise children or whatever, right? And then have nothing to show for it in the event of a divorce, right? If you are collecting unemployment for 4 years, you're not doing like marginally worse than the person that worked for £900 a month for 4 years. You're doing far worse because now you have no work history.
Yeah,
no.
But in an immediate sense, it doesn't translate. In an immediate sense. You're just thinking, well, it's really not worth my time getting out of bed and going to work for for a job you don't like, for a boss you probably don't like, doing all the stuff. For at the end of it, barely any difference. I mean, when you're in a position like that, you're not thinking ahead to the future, are you? You're thinking, how am I going to get to the end of the month? So it's I don't know. I think that there is an underclass of people like that, and I think it's growing. So it's one of those things where. I'm not advocating taking away the welfare state either. Sorry?
What evidence do you have that this class of people that are relying on welfare because they just don't want to work is growing? Where do you see that at?
Well, the numbers.
Which numbers?
Well, which ones would you like? Just the raw number
The
of
ones
people
that
over
prove
time?
that point.
Yeah, well, no. Which one specifically would you like? Do you want just the number of unemployed and welfare over time, right?
Your argument is that there are people that are choosing not to work. So I want to know what numbers you have that support the idea that people are choosing not to work to collect welfare.
Well, I'd have to look it up. I'd
Okay.
have to go and look up the numbers, but there are definitely people who choose to collect welfare instead of working because working doesn't produce enough money to be worth the time to not be on welfare. I mean, come on, you must understand that is something that happens, right?
Yeah, but the problem with these kinds of arguments of that is something that happens is because if we were watching a video of Lacey Green saying this and she were to say that something about rape culture is something that happens, you would be shouting in your video, oh, I hate it when feminists say that just because it's happened a couple times means they're going to extrapolate it to the entire male population. I'm sure that there are some people that abuse welfare, but you're saying that, well, it happens. I have no idea how much, but maybe it's a majority, right? Well, that information is worthless.
Find out. I would have got the statistics in advance if I thought it was going to come up, and I should have done, really. I just haven't checked, but I have seen them in the past. And obviously, welfare state has grown. I mean, this is the reason that the Conservatives are, in our country anyway, are putting caps in place because it's grown out of control. It's grown out of control because people choose it. And these are people.
But how do you know that it's that people choose it and not that there's just a lack of jobs available?
Talked to them. Because I've lived in poor.
It doesn't work. That doesn't work. How do you know that people are choosing to live in welfare?
First-hand experience. That's how I know.
You have first-hand experience with every single person in the United Kingdom. I don't need
first-hand experience with every single person. I need first-hand experience with a representative sample. And I've lived all around my country. I've lived all around my country, and I've dealt with the underclass all around my country. This is why people don't seem to understand. Like, these people have a different set of priorities and alignments to people who grew up in the situation sort of that we would have grown up in, like middle class, both parents, right? They view the world differently because the world is different to them. And I mean, literally, there are I hate to think how many young women in this country, and you hear this story so many times from different people where they will say, yeah, so and so has got pregnant so she can get a house, or so and so has done this so he can get this, and it's. They see that as being a goal, whereas you see that as being failure, right?
Sure.
There are lots of people like that, and I think the number is growing, which is why governments are now cracking down on the size of their welfare states.
Maybe and I think they're cracking down on the size of it in preparation for when you guys enact whatever to actually formally separate from the EU. I don't know, dude.
No, that's not the reason at all. That's not.
It just seems hard to me that because everything that you're describing would also be the same result if there was a lack of good work available too, right? But it seems like
it's. I'm not saying it's only one thing, right? But there is certainly a point at which we can trace it back to where there was a definite delineation from the average person who goes one direction doing quite well and the average person who chooses the other direction doing quite badly. There is a definite point of delineation, and it's the point, I think, at which the family structure breaks down. When parents choose to have children out of wedlock, and that's an acceptable thing to do, and it's something that's viable. They can live doing that. Because, I mean, the reason people didn't do that before the welfare state is because they'd fucking starve.
Okay, so then I guess I'm going to ask you the question that you're going to get upset then. Is that the alternative then, I guess, that you want? And then you're going to say no, but then...
No, I'm an advocate of the welfare state. This is the...
Well, then why are you spending so much time railing against it?
Because it's true. That's why. And listen, man, I've been a leftist my whole life, okay? I thought in my 20s I was a progressive, and then I met progressives. And then I realized I was actually just a liberal. And now, and there is definitely a liberal case for a welfare state. I mean, the very notion that someone could be free, I mean, that's the whole point of liberalism, is to enable people to be free, and being utterly impoverished and homeless is not freedom. I mean, that's just slavery by another form. So there is absolutely, and hell, even Frederick Hayek makes this point in The Road to Serfdom, that there's no reason that you can't have social safety nets. but they should be safety nets. They shouldn't be a persistent living wage, because that encourages people to live off this persistent living wage, even if it's not very high. And we know the sort of problems it produces in communities. So there needs to be a healthy compromise, I think, between getting £25,000 a year, which is not an unrespectable salary in this country. Hell, let me just check, actually.
How many people even qualify? Because it sounds like you're quoting me like the absolute highest that people can qualify for. Like, what is the average like benefits received?
It depends on your circumstances.
Okay, so because 25,000 is probably like the highest possible.
Yeah. That is the highest. That's like for a single mother with like 4 children or something.
Okay.
But for example, for a single man with no children, which is what I was at the time, it was piss all, absolutely piss all. But
so do you think someone in that scenario is going to make the choice then to go and have a kid to get more welfare?
Well, if you're a woman, yeah. I mean, they don't.
You think? Wait, hold on, no, because I want to clarify that. So you think that there are women that are in a poor position that will make the choice, that this is a decent number will make the choice to go out and just have a kid because they think they'll get more money off of welfare for it?
It's not that I think that. It's that happens.
Okay, I don't think I agree with that.
I know you don't, but I can guarantee to you that it does.
I'm sure that it happens to some extent, but I doubt that it's like it's probably like in the fractions of a percent or whatever.
I think that you're wildly optimistic, and I only think this because I spent my 20s living with people who were piss poor. So I'm just saying that from first-hand experience, I think you're being really optimistic. But that's not to say that we shouldn't have social safety nets. I absolutely think we should, but I don't think there's any denying that Thomas Sowell is right when he says the welfare state has enabled this lifestyle to occur, and people who will be satisfied with it. They're not necessarily, like I said, they're not people who are dreaming, looking at the stars. They're people who are looking at where their next meal's coming from, where making sure they've got a roof over their head. They come from such a low perspective that's the high point of their life. That's what their goal is. That they will take that option. So I'm not, like I said, I don't think there's any easy answer or anything like that, but it's not something that can be solved unless the people involved want to solve it. And
gotcha. But I mean, we've already established, I think, like the central point underpinning of all of economics is that people respond predictably to economic incentive, right?
Sure.
And then you yourself have said that these people probably wouldn't be making the same choices if the welfare state wasn't that high, right?
Agreed.
So it seems like there has to be some external factor that influences these choices, and we acknowledge that there is that. So that's what has to happen. You can't just go to these communities and tell these people that they need to change, because if the incentive still exists for them to exhibit the bad behavior, they'll still exhibit it, right?
So is this you being on record saying cut the welfare state?
No, this is I'm arguing about. I'm arguing about the idea that people make choices very predictably. That the best thing that you can do is inspire them to make better choices, and not just go and tell them to do it, because they probably won't be able to. And that inspiration for better choices will come in the form of, for me, I think education is a really big deal, and that's probably one of the best ways to do it.
They do, but I do think having such a generous welfare state is an incentive not to follow a life path that will produce wealth and productivity.
I agree with that in concept. I can't speak to the United Kingdom, but I don't think that in the United States the welfare state is generous. I don't think people would choose to live on welfare if they had the opportunity to get a decent job.
Well, there we go. Then it depends on what your definitions of generous and decent are.
I mean, like, people on welfare can live and eat and maybe have like a phone. But I don't think that people on welfare are, going to Abercrombie and Fitch and, going out partying every night.
They're not. They're sat around watching TV.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe for the next debate or whatever, I can look up like more specific numbers, but I've never read. Every time I've tried to research any of these problems, it's very similar. This argument, this is not related at all, but it reminds me a lot of the voter fraud issue. People talk about voter fraud a lot, and it's a really hot topic in the United States, which is surprising because it's never, ever, ever been recorded to have happened. But every time you have an argument with somebody about voter fraud, they always, well, voter fraud is rampant. It's like, really? Where?
What
It's
about,
like, well,
what about George Bush's Florida recount? Wasn't that a
they
bit
might have asked
sus?
for a recount, but voter fraud on a mass level has never, ever, and most people in chat, and in both chats, I'm sure even in mine included, are gonna be like, oh, that's not true, that's not, but it's true. There has never been evidence of massive voter fraud in the United States, but
That's
a
probably
lot of
very
people
difficult to
believe
do,
it.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's very difficult, and it's just never happened. But a lot of people believe it. A lot of people will believe it if you say there's a lot of vote fraud. Even the president-elect of the United States a few days ago tweeted out that millions of people voted illegally, even though there's no evidence for it. But anytime you try to nail somebody down in a conversation like this, they always go like, well, you know, some people have done it, and I know a guy that did it, and I know people that did it, and I know some people that it's like, okay, well, what does this actually mean in a grand scale, right? And I feel like when you talk about welfare, a lot of it is similar, where it's like, well, I know that there's a person that has abused the welfare system, and I was like, okay, well, how many people, like, and you always have these stories when you talk about like, well, a lot of people on welfare are kind of barely living on welfare, and living on welfare sucks. And then someone's like, well, one time I went to the welfare office and I saw a guy pull up in an Escalade, and it's like, oh, okay, I mean, that's your one example, I guess.
Yeah, but I'm not. Yeah, but what I'm saying is this is a pervasive problem with. I don't know how to describe them really. I don't want to call them an underclass because it sounds derogatory.
Call them an underclass and uneducated. I think those are great words for it. It's fine. We could be frank. I'm not PC.
Well, okay, yeah,
Uneducated people that are born that make stupid choices because they're largely stupid. Yeah.
Right, but it is a pervasive problem and mindset. If you just go into these communities and talk to them.
Sure.
This is what I'm saying about statistics, right? They
But again,
don't
like
change.
I think that these people make these choices because they're too stupid to make a better choice. So
Sure.
the solution there is education, and there's not
Well,
much you can really do with the welfare state. Like if you get rid of the welfare, then the choices are just going to be more likely to resort to like crime or something. I seriously doubt that when you get rid of welfare, that black kid in school is like weighing the decisions between whether or not I want to go to school to do
I'm not saying that's
astrophysics
an
or live
option.
on the welfare state.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not even saying that getting rid of the welfare state is an option at all, and
Gotcha.
or even cutting it back to the extent that might be necessary is an option. You know, I don't know what the solution is, right? And I'm not saying I do, but I think that we do know what, and I think it comes down to what you're saying about incentives, right? That having that there as an incentive is causing people to choose it, and it causes the sort of people to choose it who never had grand visions of them earning lots of money and owning their own house or anything like that. You know, these people never for a second, I mean, no one in their family owns a house. They've, you know, no one in the whole fucking recorded history of their family has owned a house, probably. And these people have got no dreams of owning a house. They've got dreams of just getting by and getting
This
by
is
a
so
little
strange because all of the things that you're talking about right now sound like the things that I was saying when you were talking about poor black communities in the United States.
Yeah,
This history of families that don't own houses, this history of families and all these people around them.
Yeah, absolutely. This will be the case for many of these people, right?
Okay. Well, then the principal thing that we were arguing in the beginning, then we both agree on then that people really don't have that as much agency as we like to pretend we have sometimes, that we are largely a product. A lot of our decisions.
Their agency to make a choice that is immediately beneficial but detrimental in the long term.
Because it's heavily influenced by the environment around us.
Yeah,
right?
well, it's heavily influenced by the fact that they're options. They're choosing between the options they have. One of the options is live on welfare. The other option is do a shit job for hardly any pay, and it's just easier to choose.
Gotcha.
It's the path of least resistance.
Okay, I don't disagree with any of this, and then so kind of like for people.
Let me carry on, right? And marriages aren't easy. I mean, as a person who's married and who knows lots of other marriage people, I don't think. I mean, if you look at any bloody like marriage advice website or something, any agony aunt is going to be like, yeah, well, marriage is difficult. It requires work. Well, it doesn't require work if you've got the option of just not being married. If you've been like, well, hey, what happens if I don't get married? I don't have to put up with this dickhead. I can just, you know, I'll just go out. He'll have to pay me money every month. The state will give me a house. You know, it's an incentive, and it's a path of lesser resistance, and so people choose it.
Sure. If those paths are available to them from birth, yeah, I think people will generally pick the path of least resistance.
But we also know that choosing the path of least resistance results in various social problems for the descendants of those people who choose the path of least resistance.
Yeah, dude, I agree with everything you're saying.
I know.
This is what I was saying from the very start. That when you put people follow predictable paths, if you put two drops of water on different ends of the board and you watch them roll down, that people will follow predictable paths. They're very predictable choices, and that everything you're talking about, path of least resistance, and all of this goes back to stats. What is the path of least resistance for somebody born in this scenario? Well, they're probably going to do this thing, just statistically speaking.
Look, yeah, but that's the end result. Okay, hang on. Yeah, so this is people exercising their agency, and it's just them choosing. It's not they don't have agency. It's just they choose the easiest option, which I don't, no, you can't blame them. But
it feels like semantics a little bit, but I understand what you're saying.
I don't think I think it is an important distinction, because we've come to the point where we are kind of trapped in a circumstance where we can't just take away the welfare state. That's going to be damaging to too many people and children, right?
Sure.
It's difficult to sort of whittle it down without resistance politically, especially from the left, even though we know the welfare state is certainly a contributing factor to all of these problems. And you can't I mean, it's very hard to, I don't know how we're going to educate the black community to explain to them, look, it's because you're choosing to do these things that is
to be fucking stupid. Yeah, no, I mean, like,
yeah,
but that's what has to happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, how can we get from a point where we've identified that these are the problems, these are the root causes of what's going on, and certain things need to be changed? How do we persuade them to change?
I mean, to go back again, the thing that I would say is I think that education, from what I'm aware of philosophically, education is supposed to be the great equalizer. The thing, that's why even in the United States, where we fucking jerk off capitalism every fucking day of the week, even we in the United States provide education for free, because philosophically, education is supposed to be that thing that no matter what the fuck your background is, it's a black box that you can throw anybody into and get out, like the same thing, no matter who goes in, it doesn't matter. You should be able to get out a good person. But that's not what education is in the United States. It's very heavily influenced.
Yeah, okay. But the problem is, if they won't attend their education, what do we do?
I look at the reasons why they won't attend their education.
Okay, it's bad parenting.
I mean, then you try to move people into better areas, and I don't know, like, it gets really difficult. But listen, the conversation that we're having right now is the conversation we want to hear. I don't have the answers for you. I can't tell you, okay? I know that, in my personal opinion, I think that the thing lies in education. But this conversation that we're having, where you're asking me, what do you think is the solution then? How do we fix the parents? Right? These are awesome questions that I would love to hear happen. But the problem is, what the conversation normally is what you open the conversation with, which is, how do we go to black communities and tell them to stop doing it? How do we go to black communities and tell them to stop making bad choices? This is a conversation that produces no results. But the conversation of, how do we get parents to parent their kids so that their kids value education, so that they stop destroying their fucking lives and their own communities, which black people are the #1 destroyers of, is of the black community, right? Which I agree with that.
True.
How do you do that? I think the answer lies in education and talking to parents and figuring that shit out. It's not just telling them to be better, right?
Okay, but I think we can both agree then that the answer isn't blame white people.
No, I think that's fucking stupid.
Right. Okay, that's great. That's pretty much all I wanted to hear, because this is and this is why I think it's affecting. I think this is really why it looks like a racial issue, right? Because it's very easy to otherize white people if you're black, and it's very easy to otherize black people if you're white.
Well, I think the biggest problem that comes on here, this goes into completely everything. The social justice warriors have a huge problem with it. Social justice warriors will try to saddle an entire class's worth of historical crimes onto an individual, which will immediately shut them off from any. So, like, I could make a bunch of factual statements, right? Black people's position in the United States is probably largely due to what happened with things like Jim Crow and slavery and whatnot. White people definitely contribute to that overwhelmingly early on, right? And black people were the people that got fucked by this hardcore. And that there are probably some people, white people in positions of power today, that are discriminatory against black people. So these are all factual statements, right? Yeah. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean, though, that I can find a random white kid on the internet and then tell a random white kid, hey, every single problem that has ever come from white people is your fault, atone. That's the dumbest fucking approach. And that's like the #1 issue that social justice warriors and feminists, or third wave feminists, whatever you call them, have the same issue, where you try to saddle an entire class's worth of guilt onto an individual and then expect that that individual will take you seriously, especially because more often than not, you're talking to people that probably don't own slaves, that probably don't directly discriminate against black people, that probably don't even scream, there's a nigger every time they see a black people, right? So these people are even less likely to believe you, right? There are definitely problems on the left when it comes to
I think it's more important though, because I think the message, really the ultimate thing that needs to be drilled down into people's heads is it's not someone else's fault.
Yeah, in terms of like addressing these problems socially and giving it to people, I largely agree with that. I think that assigning blame doesn't really get you anywhere.
Yes.
Unless you want to talk about like paying out reparations, which is stupid. Like, I don't think that assigning blame anywhere is really going to accomplish much. I don't disagree with that. If anything, it just leads to more resentment, and it leads to the people who are being blamed. Yeah. Because I think it's possible that you could frame a lot of these racial issues. Even racists would agree with your points if you framed them in a better way. Like, don't you want black people to not kill many police officers? Don't you want black people to not commit so much crime so you don't have to deal with it? Don't you want, like, even racist people would probably agree, like, yeah, that'd be better. Like, I don't want to deal with these niggers, right? Even racist people agree. But the problem is when you approach somebody with this idea that, oh, you're white, well, I'm about to unload on you every single bad thing an ancestor of yours might have done like 100 years ago. Like, I think that doesn't lead to anything productive.
No, sorry, my son's just woken up. Give me 2 seconds. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, sure problem. Or sure thing. Sorry, I keep moving off the microphone apparently. Oh God, I'm looking at people in his chat now. Indeed, Destiny. In that case, do not take black people's autonomy away from them. They are responsible for their choices. It really is that simple. It's really not that simple, though, dog.
Sorry about that.
Oh yeah, no problem.
So yeah, but I mean, I've seen. I wouldn't even want to know how many videos of Black Lives Matter protests and just like not even protests, just like street demonstrations in black communities where they will just say this is the white person's fault. I mean, you will get black people saying, look, the white man has all the money and he needs to give me some money. And it's like, look, it just doesn't work that way. And even if he did give you the money, it wouldn't help you in the long run. And the whole reason you're poor is actually not white people.
Sure. Yeah. But I think that, and the problem is that today, politically and socially, all of these movements really are just reactionaries of reactionary of reactionary of reactionary, right?
Well,
so the reason why people say that is because people keep telling them, dude, you've got problems, deal with it. Don't blame anybody else, deal with it. Don't ever worry about anybody else's position. You just need to deal with it. While they're continually getting fucked by some of these systems. Like, well, how am I supposed to deal with the fact that if I get caught with drugs, I'm twice as likely as a white kid of being convicted for it. And I'm going to serve on average, like 50% higher fines and time. Like, how am I supposed to just deal with that, right? I think that the problem is that, like, it seems like nobody is ever willing to go to the middle on any issue ever. So you get these insane reactionaries that are responding to the insane reactionaries on the other side. And then everything is just like completely insane, I
agree, but the left really isn't helping in that regard, is it?
Oh, I definitely, totally, 100% agree.
Yeah, I'm glad.
If you look at sure, if you look at things like what goes on, like in like the left talks about like freedom of speech sometimes. Oh no, I guess they really don't. Never mind.
Really
Actually, that's not even true, right? But if you look at like what goes on with like, I think that college campuses, or how about diversity, right? The left talks about diversity a lot. Sure. Well, diversity of thought is important too. I think that's a big cop out sometimes when people say, well, I don't care about diversity of skin color. I care about diversity of thought. Okay, well, if every single person around you is white, I think that says something. But with that being said, if you're going to talk about diversity of thought, you can't ban every single speaker, right? I fucking hate Milo and Ben Shapiro and these guys, but I would never dream of banning them from a fucking college campus.
Ben Shapiro? He's 5'3". He's not.
Sure. But like, even though I disagree with these people, right, I would never ban them from a college campus. And I sure as fuck don't want my kid going to a school where no other, with the whole point, this is the only time in your life where you can challenge your own thoughts without destroying yourselves because you're still in school. This is when you're supposed to do it, right? Yeah. Like, I would never agree with that. And I don't think that the left help themselves very much, especially when they align themselves with like these ultra oppressive figures that are trying to settle every issue onto, white cisgendered men for every single problem,
Yeah, and this is my real issue with the left when it comes to, for example, like Black Lives Matter and stuff. I mean, there are obviously many problems, and I've got no doubt there are many racist police and all this sort of stuff. But the overwhelming attitude that comes out is this is something that white people have done to black people. And I think we've agreed that that's not the case.
Yeah, for sure. But then would you agree then that the extreme on the other side will say that black culture today is 100% a fault?
Yeah, they're wrong. They're wrong as well.
What you said at the beginning of this conversation is something that I deal with every fucking day, by the way. I will go onto my Twitter and I'll have people call me a social justice warrior libcuck because of some things that I say. And then I'll go onto Reddit and I'll be in a thread where a bunch of people are talking about how I am a disgusting fucking fucking shitlord for, you know, talking about, you know, men's rights or whatever, you know, like,
how dare you?
yeah. The positions in the middle are like the hardest to ever have, because it seems like nobody is interested in voicing any of those positions.
Nobody wants to have the hard conversations, do they?
Yeah, but like that's another problem too. No, dude, see, like what you just said is 100% true, right? Because the conversation of how do we expand education so that poor people, or, you know, people that are fucked in certain racial groups or different class groups, how do we get education to these people so that they actually improve their lives? That's a much more difficult conversation than just either side, than saying, well, white people are responsible for everything. That doesn't really get us anywhere. Or saying, well, black people are responsible for fucking everything and fucking themselves up. That doesn't really get us anywhere either, right? The problem is that people want to take the easy out for everything and not actually move towards any real solutions, which is a big thing with my problem with Trump, right? We want to build a fucking wall. Is that really going to fix the problems with people coming across illegal, the people overstaying visas, the people that come by truck and boat and dig holes underneath giant walls? Like, is that really going to help anything, right? But people always want like the easy outs for everything and to take the extremist positions, and they never want to deal with anything that might challenge, you know, what they're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the build the wall thing was just a meme, you know, a catchy meme, a slogan, you know.
Sure, but not to poke too hard, but like, couldn't you also offer that the what was it, 150 million a week that'll go to the NHS? Wasn't that also kind of a meme? They're driving around in that little bus for the Brexit shit.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a stupid promise. I don't know why they said it. You know, I never suggested that that'd happen. It's obviously not going to happen. So I don't know why the fuck they'd say it. But this is the thing about campaign promises, isn't it? You know, you're really kind of staking out your intentions rather than necessarily how far you're going to go. But
sure.
Yeah, hey, I'm no defender of politicians in general, so gotcha. I'm not saying that that this is wise or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, I think what Trump was really doing with the wall is just trying to tap into people's understandable concerns about mass immigration, and in America, illegal immigration from Mexico. I think that's understandable. You know, I don't think it's illegitimate at all. I think it's something that's causing a lot of problems.
By definition, it's not illegitimate because he won the election. So yeah, it was definitely a legitimate concern. Yeah, you can't argue anyways.
I mean, there are people with illegitimate concerns that will vote based on those illegitimate concerns.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that does happen, but I don't think the question of mass immigration has been one of them. But yeah, but I think that the important thing is not pointing the finger at other people. And I'm glad to hear you say, yeah, this is something a lot of people on the left do, because my God, I hear it all the time, and I just think this is not helping anyone. You know, and
sure, but the fun thing is that they even have their own terms for you to not be allowed to do that. I spent a lot. Do you know what like shit Reddit says is?
Sorry, say again.
Do you know what shit Reddit says is?
It's a subreddit or something.
Hardcore SJW subreddit. Yeah. So you spend a lot of time in there. You pick up on the term. What?
I didn't realize it's hardcore SJW one.
Oh yeah, hardcore. Yeah, they tried to destroy my entire career like several times. But it's really funny though, because like even if you talk to a person, so like you could go up to a woman and a woman is saying, I think that all men are rapists, and I think that rape culture is this thing, and every woman is getting raped, whatever. And you're like, hey, like listen, you might have some valid concerns and you're voicing them, but like I think that there are better ways. Have you ever heard the phrase you get more flies with honey than vinegar or whatever?
Oh yeah.
Right. And then they'll say like, well, are you tone policing me? Because you're not allowed to do that. It's like, oh, okay, never mind.
No, I was actually just giving you a piece of sound advice, but yeah, I mean, you could interpret that as tone policing if you want. Well, right, okay, then I guess probably a good time to wrap it up, really.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I appreciate the conversation. I think it was better than
you were expecting.
I'm not actually even sure what I was expecting. Actually, I guess I was going to say I think it was better than most people were expecting, but it's probably a lot worse than most people were expecting, because I'm pretty sure that my fan base wanted to see fireworks. So, because a lot of my fan base, because I'm in the gamer community, so a lot of people in the gaming communities tend to fall very far to the right compared to the norm, and I'm much more closer to the center and leaning left. So, but
well, I didn't bring you on here to like, you know, wreck you in a debate or anything. I did bring you on to actually talk about the issues, because I mean, like I said, I don't think there's enough actual discussion and changing of minds going on, and I'm really glad that we can, even if we don't agree on every little point, I'm glad we can hit on like the major ones of, you know, look, you got to take responsibility for the things you do. And there, you know, there are certain things that people are doing that are causing problems, as well as all of the other things that are going on. You know, none of this is happening in a vacuum and whatnot. And I'm really glad we could hammer that out, actually.
Gotcha. All right. Well, hey, I really appreciate the conversation.
I really appreciate you coming on. It's rare to get someone from the other side who's willing to do it. Which this is why I said that you weren't an SJW from the start. You know, you might hold more extreme like leftist beliefs than me, but that you're not an SJW just by the fact you'll come and have this conversation and have it honestly.
Gotcha.
That's the prime thing.
Appreciate it. Maybe next time, because a lot of my people are showing up. Next time we can talk about Brexit. Maybe more sparks will fly.
Oh, dude, we can totally do that if you want. We can definitely do another one of these.
Sure thing.
Anyway, thanks everyone for watching, and again, thanks a lot, Steve, for coming on. I really appreciate it. Take care.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate it as well.